talk to people.
Welcome aboard the live stream, folks. We are just getting underway. We are making a U-turn now. The audio you're hearing is from our River Pilots radio here. We're up here on the bridge on the 04 level. How far is today's move? We're going to move about 6 miles down river. We're going to Paulsboro. I do expect that Ryan will be tuning in at some point. He is running around. If you notice, we're all a little out of breath. We have had a few moves today. If you've got questions, send them in. We are going to have our audio in and out throughout the day. We're going to be live streaming for the next several hours. We don't have a total ETA for when we're going to arrive in Paulsboro, but it's going to be a few hours. But we will try and answer questions in the comments too. We're going to have a few folks passing through. We'll do our best to answer them. What are we going to do in the dry dock? We've got 60 days worth of work happening. Our primary concern is the underwater hull. We're going to give it a once over, make sure it looks very pretty, and then a painter. After that, we're going to be checking the end, cathodic protection, making sure that we are protected from any electrical current coming into the hull. Right now, we've got zinc anodes. We're going to be replacing them with aluminum. And then we're going to be checking all of the through hull openings coming through the ship, primarily being where the propeller shafts come out. Those are the big ones. We're going to make sure that those are nice and wrapped up. Do we have snacks on board? We absolutely have snacks on board, and trust me, we're going to need it. Ryan might be doing Titanic on the bow. He'll show up at some point, I'm sure. But yes, expect him to appear. No, Ryan will probably not be painting the bottom of the ship. Our lovely yard workers over at the Philadphia Navy Yard from North Atlantic Ship Repair, or Philly Ship, we're going to be doing that work. So we will be posting videos of them throughout the process, so make sure you check in with us on that. Will the berth be dredged before it comes back? Unfortunately, we cannot dredge our berth this time around. It is shad spawning season, so we will not be dredging just yet. However, as we're turned around here, we're figuring out real well that maybe we don't need to dredge quite so yet anyway. Will she be keeping her props or her screws? Most likely, we would very much like to keep them. We intend to. If there is significant corrosion back there, we will not be. So it all comes down to what the state of things are. Are we competing with Texas for the fastest battleship? No, we are the world's fastest battleship. We don't need to compete. We hold that record in 1968, courtesy of Captain Snyder. So we absolutely do not need to. So not concerned with competing with Texas. If anyone hasn't tuned into Texas' stuff before, they just got high and dry, and they're out of dry dock right now. So we are big supporters of their work. We've been down there a few times to see what they're doing. Our tugboats are rearranging a little bit, which is why it's not really moving. But don't worry, we're just getting organized here. We have a big turn to make. We will not be making a 7-gun salute today, though the guns will expect to go off a few more times today. We've already done like 5 shots already, so we're going to do some more as we pass by important sites, including our friends Olympia across the river, who are just waiting for us. They're just slightly out of frame from our camera shot, and unfortunately, our camera has a handy-dandy box next to it, so we're a little limited with our view. That's okay. We just have the one camera angle. However, we will post additional video after this is all done. And I believe if you go watch the other live stream on our channel, you can see it from the sky. Watch the drones. The drones are going to stick around for a little while today, and then we will lose that footage as we depart from the pier. We do have a river pilot aboard. They are up here on the bridge with our camera. So we are on the bridge as well, though. Jupiter is not traveling with New Jersey today, but we are hoping that she'll still stand a chance of joining us on the way back. She's still sitting there across the river, keeping a nice watchful eye on us. The other sisters, the Big J, all do great. Iowa and Los Angeles just signed a 30-year lease for their property, so she seems to be doing just fine. Wisconsin down in Norfolk, Virginia is just still pretty, still has the best deck in the fleet. And Missouri continues to be one of the most visited ships in the world, so everyone seems to be doing just fine. We are on the 04 level of the bridge here, so where the conning tower is. The Jupiter is a tugboat that was with us when our ship was first launched. If you haven't heard, we were built at the Philadphia Navy Yard, completed in dry dock number 3, and that's where we're returning to in about next week. Pits up Paulsboro first. So Jupiter was one of the ships that was with us when we were first launched, and she comes back to escort us when we returned here as a museum in 2001. So we're hopeful that she will join us for the tug back to our pier in give or take 60 days. We cannot fire the 16-inch guns, would be cool, but our tugboats would not like that at all. So no tugboats for us, unfortunately. We have invited Drac to visit us in dry dock, and we're hoping that we'll see him soon. Why am I not up on the 08? Because I'm mostly doing other things today, and this was much more convenient location for us. But, I mean, can you beat the view from here? I think the 04 has a pretty good view, too. The yellow flag under the ensign, that is the wetsuit battle flag. The crew made that in the late 1980s. The only time I've ever seen it actually up was at decommissioning. We have started, we are underway. We're just sort of in a point where we're rearranging some tugs. Big J's rudder is not being used. It is completely locked in place, as well as our screws. We do have videos on that if you want to watch it after the live stream is over. If you haven't heard, we have like 1,500 episodes. So anything you've ever wanted to hear about the ship, we probably have a video about it. The signal flags that run from the front of the ship to the back of the ship do not say an actual message. They are in the order of, it's a jumble of letters deliberately, so that way nothing is spelled out. The signal flags along the side of the ship, which you can't see from this view, but you can from the other live stream, do say on the starboard side, it says BBNJ, which is our call sign. We have a second battle flag on that side as well. And then on the port side, the flags have shifted a few times today. We had a flag up to signify that we needed a tug, a flag to signify we had a river pilot aboard, and a flag to signify for the personnel to return. I believe we're also flying the 4 flags that say PNSY for Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, which, as a reminder again, that's where we were built and where we will be returning to. Ryan does not live on the ship, but he will be in and out today for the live stream. We did blast the whistle as we got underway and fired a salute. So we'll continue doing more of that throughout the day. She cannot move under her own power. She is moving by help of tugs, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. Hello, tugboat. She is one of 4 tugboats doing the work. So look for them today. What's our tug company helping us today? It is McAllister Tugs. Each tug has their own name, and if my pilot comes back, they might even be able to tell us what they are. We're going to take a brief pause on our commentary here. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Go back down and start checking people in.
Hey guys, this is Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. How's everyone doing today? I don't know about you guys, but I'm having a pretty good day right now. We are currently in the middle of the channel. Our bow is about to be straight on to Olympia. They're holding us in place and moving us about 180. I'm not sure how well you guys could see it, but they sort of slid us out from the pier so that we were parallel to it the entire way, so we didn't get stuck in the mud. Now they're turning us around, and we'll be in the channel, and we'll start our transit towards the Walt Whitman Bridge as soon as they get us around 180.
Off the bow here, we've got USS Olympia. We talked a little bit about Jupiter earlier. What do you know about Olympia?
So we are coming across USS Olympia right now. Behind her is the submarine Bakuna. You can just sort of see the gray of her bullnose past Olympia's bow. Olympia, of course, Admiral Dewey's flagship during the Battle of Manila Bay and the Spanish-American War, continued to serve through World War I, brought the unknown soldier home from France, and then was kept here at the Philadelphia Navy Yard because Franklin Roosevelt planned on opening a Navy museum, which would have included Constitution, Constellation, Hartford, Olympia, and the fifth ship often varied, but he was going to take them all to the Potomac. And then he passed away, and thankfully, an organization formed and was able to get Olympia and open her up. So she has been operating as a museum ship now for probably 60 years or more.
Do you know how fast we're traveling today?
We're probably only going to be transiting at about 2 or 3 knots. That's, of course, going to be variable throughout the day. We are going to be going out with the tide, so that'll be helping us, and the wind will be behind us as well. But because this is a dead ship tow, if other ships are coming up, we may have to pull over, for lack of a better word, to get out of their way. So this we can't really say.
Front gate. Letitia, can somebody come in?
I can't really say how fast we'll be going or at what time we'll finish. The tall ship in front of Olympia is the Mushaloo. She was originally a German iron ore carrier named Kurt, and she had the great misfortune of being in the United States in 1917 when the United States declared war on Germany. And so we interned her and then renamed her and then put her in movies such as Godfather and Rocky.
Circling back, we're going to be in dry dock for about 60 days. We've got a few really great projects we're working on.
I don't need to say things. Are you saying things that are...
I can say things. It's up to you.
All right. Right now, we are waiting to fire a salute to Olympia. They're going to fire one towards us, probably as we turn broadside.
To everybody landside, this is Marshall. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, just got a good question here. Do we have any signals hanging from our signal flags today? So if you see the up and over lines that go around the ship for dressing the ship for colors, those intentionally do not say anything. The Navy prescribes a mumble jumble so that nobody can put on there something dirty. Oh, we just fired the salute to Olympia. Anyway, so that's for the up and over flags. For the flags on our halyards, we did spell things out on there. On our starboard side halyards, we have BB and J, the ship's 4-letter radio call sign. We also have our 1980s battle flag flying from there. On the port side, we have PNSY for Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, which is where we're heading. We also have a couple other flags flying. I can't remember the exact designators now. I think,
Papa and Hotel.
which mean?
The Zulu flag is flying, but we need a tugboat escort. The hotel flag that's the letter H. It signifies that that personnel need to return to the ship. And the P for Papa is for personnel, and the hotel flag says that we have a harbor pilot on board.
Okay.
Say anything? So we are now headed towards the Walt Whitman Bridge.
And we're about 45 degrees off of what our base course is going to be as we transit under the bridge. They're still bringing the ship around. Libby probably mentioned this earlier in the chat, but we have 4 McAllister tugboats on us right now. There is one on the hip that's providing the propulsive power. And then we've got some other ones on the bow and the stern that are currently pushing us around so that we're going to get our navigation from them instead of from our rudders. Yeah.
No, I mean to you. Yeah.
You can currently see SS United States on the extreme left upper corner. You can see her 2 smokestacks popping above the warehouse that she's behind. We're going to go right across her stern as we head towards the bridge.
We will allow people to get under the ship. We're doing dry dock tours. If you go to battleshipnewjersey.org, you can't miss it. It's all over our website. Dry dock tours take place every Saturday and Sunday. We've got new tours starting every 15 minutes throughout the day, where you get to get underneath the ship, see the blocks, see the screws, see the rudders for the first time. Again, get your tickets. Get them while you can. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get underneath an Iowa-class battleship. I don't think you'll ever do that again.
Libby, which of us is the color commentator?
I think it might be me today. Sorry, Ryan. We got a good question. Are there any original crew on board?
Oh, there is currently 1 original crew member on board. His name is Ken Kirsch. He was a machinery repairman on board in 1968 and 1969 during the ship's Vietnam deployment. He is the one who is manning our saluting gun. He fired the salutes on the pier as we left and the salute to Olympia. And I believe he's going to fire another salute as we pass Fort Mifflin on the way down. Ken works in our overnight program and also volunteers on board in the machine shop and does a tremendous amount of work for us here.
Is there going to be any work done to the dock while we're away?
A very good question. Any work being done to the pier while we are away? Yes, the plan is we're going to start surveying the pier now that the ship is gone, see if there's any maintenance. This pier was installed specifically for us in 2001 when the ship was brought here. And essentially, we haven't done any major maintenance to it since. And we haven't really had to. We've done some work as needed. So now the engineers that have been helping us with the project are going to look at that, and we'll plan a scope of work while the ship is gone.
Please ask her to go to the ticket office, please.
So we've got a great question. What does today mean to you? I haven't slept in 3 days. I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, I didn't sleep a wink last night. Yesterday was my 34th birthday. All I asked for was to ride a battleship, but I've been asking for that for years. Who thought it would happen this year?
Somebody did ask in here whether or not it's a pretty steady ride, and honestly, you can hardly tell we're moving. It's a very steady ride. If you look out the windows, you can see that we're moving. All makes sense, but we're not rolling at all. We're also moving a couple of knots, so I wouldn't expect us to.
3 knots.
3 knots. We're moving 3 knots. We got the official report from above.
That means that right now, we are the fastest battleship anywhere in the world. It's been a long time since we've held that title.
Are we worried about the wind at all? It's very windy today.
We are not worried about the wind today. Leading up to today, obviously, March can have some really breezy winds. And if it was too bad, we might not have been able to do the move today. However, what we were seeing was not anything bad. The ship is a pretty big sailplane area, but despite this weather keeping our flags nice and stiff, it's not really doing much to the ship. Certainly nothing that the tugboats can overcome.
That's on the other one. People keep asking here about us being the fastest battleship in the world. The reason they're asking that is because Texas just got underway not so long ago. How are we different from Texas Project? Texas Project is much bigger for starters.
And
How are we similar is really
For reference, that's our CEO, Marshall Spayback, tuning in for us as well. We got a whole crew up here on the ridge.
We are different from Texas's dry docking in that we are a younger ship. we are closer to the dry docking that they did back in the 90s, in that this is our first dry docking as a museum ship. And so it's a slightly smaller scope of work than what Texas is doing now. And we're doing this to establish a baseline and get the ship in good shape so that when we cross that 100-year mark like Texas, and we will still be around at that point, thanks to this dry docking, that we will not have that same scope of work in 20 or 30 years.
What kind of condition are we expecting to find the hull in?
That looks so great.
In many ways, we don't know what condition we're going to find the hull in. Nobody has seen the underwater body of this ship since August of 1990, with the exception of a couple of scuba divers who had extremely limited vision thanks to the cloudiness. Lack of damage that we've seen inside the ship tells us that we shouldn't expect to see too much. At the wind water line, we can still see relatively intact paint coatings. There's no reason to expect that that intactness will not continue all the way below the water lines. We were told to expect that our zinc anodes are relatively intact. So honestly, we're not expecting to see too much when we get her out of the water, but one never knows. That's why we're doing this.
We're getting a lot of questions here about future videos from us. We are absolutely going to have video of draining the water out. We're absolutely going to have video from underneath the hull. Folks, if you're not used to this channel, we made videos about changing light bulbs. We've made like 5 videos on chairs. We are absolutely going to make a ton of content about this project, so stay tuned over the course of the next 60 days or so as we document that whole project. What are the zinc anodes for?
The zinc anodes provide our passive cathodic protection. Cathodic protection essentially keeps the ship from turning into a battery. We have an electric charge on board, and we have a bunch of dissimilar metals. So essentially, the current goes from the more noble metals to the least noble metals. Actually, I think it's the other way around. And the least noble metals are going to lose some of their mass. They're going to corrode more quickly. And so by bolting even less noble metals onto the ship, in our case, right now, zinc, the zinc should be corroding instead of the steel, which would be sacrificing itself for the bronze otherwise.
So one of the projects that Ryan and I have been up to today is we've been checking the ship, making sure that she's not leaking or anything like that. We haven't found any so far. We didn't expect to find any, but we keep looking just in case, which means that throughout this live stream, we are going to be making some pauses in our commentary, but the live stream is going to continue without us. But we're not quite ready to switch over to that just yet, correct?
I don't know. I could use a lunch break.
You want to trade off?
My biggest concern throughout all this is, even though we sounded the water, we knew how deep it was, is that we would have hit a sandbar or something as we left the pier, and that could have dragged our propeller shafts or our rudders in some way. And if that had have happened, maybe that opens up one of those gland seals and causes water to get in the shaft alleys or after steering. And fortunately, at least during our first check, not only have we not run aground or had any issues like that, we have not seen any leaks of those areas on the ship, which are what I would consider to be the most endangered during this move.
Is Jupiter related to USS Langley at all?
Ryan? Yes. Oh. There was.
Langley was.
Yeah. The original, the aircraft carrier Langley CV-1 was originally named Jupiter. She was a collier. The tugboat Jupiter dates back to around when the collier Jupiter was built. Because the tug Jupiter is not a commissioned Navy ship, it didn't matter that they had different names, or that they had the same names, excuse me. But this tugboat is not related to that aircraft carrier, which was sunk in 1942.
And for full clarity, Jupiter is not underway with us right now. She has been underway with us when we were first launched back in 1942 on December 7th, as well as when we were brought here as a museum back in 2001. We're hoping that she'll be able to join us for our tug back. They need your support, though. If you look up Tug Jupiter on Facebook, you'll find out all about them. And they're trying to get their systems running so that way they can cruise alongside us. We just took a peek over on our tug captain's side, and they've got the computer running here that tells us that we are moving at a rapid speed of a whole 3 knots.
Which is approximately 3.6 miles per hour. We are in the channel and we are heading towards the Walt Whitman Bridge now. They're expecting us to get there if nothing delays us, no other ships coming our way. It might be around 1:30, maybe. And just now on the starboard side of our right-hand gun barrels, you can see the stacks of SS United States. We're getting closer to her.
SS United States has a great connection with us, though. United States has the same engineering plant that we do, basically.
A very similar plant, actually even more powerful than an Iowa-class battleship. And she's got a greater length-to-beam ratio. She's more hydrodynamically efficient. And if I remember correctly, roughly the same weight. So we don't even know how fast she could go throttles wide open, which they never did in service, but she could outrun an Iowa-class battleship. Remember, though, that for every 2,000 tons that we're able to offload from New Jersey, we can gain an extra quarter knot of speed. So maybe if we unship our gun barrels and remove the gun turrets, we can catch up with her.
Are you enjoying it?
So we are, of course, not moving under our own power. If you haven't seen our tugs, so they are off camera now, it looks like. We are moving by tugboat today. We don't use our engines anymore. That's one of the few rules that the Navy gave us, which also means we're not spinning our screws, our propellers, or using our rudders. The tugboats are doing all the work. Our power on board today is coming courtesy of a very helpful generator. A lot of you guys have been asking that. What color are we painting the ship?
I really want to do hot pink, but I got overruled in that.
Operation Petticoat was so great, though.
Yeah, that's why people call me Seaman Hornsby. Anyway, we're going to be basically repainting the ship in the same color she was. Any gray that we repaint is going to be the same color of haze gray. The boot topping is going to return to the black color, and the below the water section is going to be painted red.
So the Navy gave us the ship about 20 years ago. They gave us some rules, including that we can't run the engines. What else did the Navy tell us when they gave us the ship?
It's your problem now, suckers!
So now are you're helping?
One of the relatable things that they included in here is that there is a note that says that if we're going to move the ship, we have to tell them. So we did call the Navy and tell them that we were going to move the ship today. And they said, you're moving her 6 miles? Have fun with that. They were not terribly concerned with this move at all, which is good.
Yeah, they were more concerned if we were going to shift owners, they need to approve that the new owner is capable. If we were going to shift home ports, they would need to approve that the new location was going to be sustainable for the ship as a museum. But since we're only leaving for 2 months and then coming right back, they essentially said, you don't even need our stamp of approval for that. We do not turn down approval.
Here's a great question. Why are the bottom of ships usually painted red?
The red is usually a tint that comes from the anti-fouling part of the paint, and that keeps marine growth from growing on the bottom of the ships as badly, and it helps us retain our top speed. If we grow a bunch of stuff on the bottom, we can't move as fast. There's too much resistance.
If we had the horsepower to get her on the dock.
Yeah.
As a reminder, folks, we are headed to Paulsboro Marine Terminal. We are going to be spending a few days there, almost a week. We're going to be ballasting the ship. Why is ballasting so important? Why can't we just go straight into the dry dock?
Because we don't want to break the ship.
Uh-huh.
If we set her down now with the stern 10 feet lower than the bow, that means that the rudders and the propellers are going to sit down on the blocks first. They're going to be holding the whole weight of the ship, and they can't. They'll break off. The Navy calculated that our trim has to be less than 3.81 feet in order for us to safely sit down on the blocks relatively evenly. So that will require 2,000 tons of fresh water, approximately 500,000 gallons. And Captain Benton told me earlier that the 4 tugs combined have a shaft horsepower of 26,000. With 26,000 shaft horsepower on the Battleship, we could reach our most economical cruising speed of 15 knots. If we wanted to go at our max speed, we would need 212,000 shaft horsepower.
Just checking in with the tugs, we are at 3.3 knots right now.
Oh, that's just about 4 miles per hour, folks. The breeze is really catching my hair now.
One of the questions people ask is if we've learned anything from Texas. And for those of you who haven't tuned in before, we have been to see Battleship Texas out of the water a few times now. We have been tuning in with all of the other ships in the fleet a lot. There's a lot to learn. Anything in particular you took from visiting Texas?
Oh, man. Travis and the folks at Texas gave us so many lessons learned, so many things to look for. They put us in contact with so many of the contractors that they have used successfully. One thing that folks don't know, all of us museum ships talk to each other. So if you are a contractor and you do bad work on one ship, don't expect to get a job on any other historic ship. But when you do good work, then all of us are clamoring to get a hold of you. A name that comes to mind is Lance Thomas at Anode Solutions. He does the cathodic protection for most of the museum ships in the fleet, and he does a good job, so we're all using him, basically. Resolve Marine is a company that is going to be doing the ballasting. They were on board Texas to dewater her if needed. And we asked them if they could, instead of having the pumps on board the ship to pump water off, if they could put the pumps in the river and pump water onto us. And they were a little bit confused by our request. They said that's not what they normally do, but sure. And so there's a perfect example of a group that Texas put us in contact with that's working out great for us.
We've been getting some really great questions about the preparation work for today. And we've been preparing for this, it feels like, your whole life. But we like to joke that sort of preparations for this work really started last July, thanks to the state of New Jersey for giving us big support in the funding. But what other work have we been up to the last few months, weeks, days?
Does panic attacks count as preparation work?
One of the big visual things we started with is we took the radar and the mast off. Again, we got videos on the channel. You watch them. But we had to take them off so that way we could get under the Walt Whitman Bridge. That's what you're seeing in front of you here that we are swiftly approaching. We should be there sometime soon. So why do we have to take them off?
Well, the base of the bridge is about 150 feet above the river at, I think it was mean low tide, something like that. And with cars on there, it actually sits even 5 feet lower than that. So normally at this draft, our air draft is about 176 feet. So any way you spell it, we cannot fit under there. But by removing several of the radar antennas and other antennas up there, and of course the mast, we can now safely transit under it, even at high tide, which one of the things that was concerning us was we initially thought we had to leave the pier at high tide, which is what we ended up doing. That's why we picked 12:10 today. That was high tide. And then we would have to wait for low tide to go under the bridge. Dead ship tows on the river here are restricted to daylight hours. And since, actually, I think today's the first day of spring, but we were planning on doing this trip in winter when we've got not much daylight. And we wanted to go into our berth at Paulsboro at high tide. So we couldn't wait 12 hours to go from high tide to low tide to high tide as we just block the entire shipping channel here. So by cutting off all that stuff, we're able to safely transit under the bridge, and we're going to be able to shorten our trip, and hopefully I'll be home in time for dinner.
Just tuning into the live stream, I see that USS Kidd is joining us. If you guys aren't familiar with them, they're down in Baton Rouge. Their ship's a little smaller than us, but they are headed to dry dock soon, too. Also, hi, Trisha. I have to say hi to my family, too. Hi. Tell us about Kidd.
Kidd is a Fletcher-class destroyer from World War II. Tim, if that's you on there, let us know.
One of the big things with Kid that's different from us is that while we are permanently floating, she is only sometimes floating. She has a cradle, and when the river goes out on the Mississippi, they're on the Mississippi? I'm going Mississippi.
Mississippi, yeah.
Mississippi. When the river goes out, they sit down in this cradle. So their dry dock plans are being somewhat dictated by when the water comes back enough to float them out. So we unfortunately don't have many details on their project, but they have a great YouTube channel. They are also wildly entertaining. So make sure that you tune in to watch them.
Yeah, they're likely going to be the next historic ship that goes into dry dock. So we're definitely keeping an eye on them.
Someone's calling their cradle cute, but you know what? It's such a great idea for a place that couldn't support a ship necessarily year-round, just that we do, permanently tied up to the pier because of their water situation. It's a great solution. And that's one of the great things about ships is there are so many ships doing different things that we can all call each other and say, how'd that work out? Do you like that? Is there a better way to do this? Can we change it? So the older ships, the oldest ones that once became museum ships first, Texas, Olympia, Constellation, some of these older ships that have been around for a long time, they love to call some of us and give us good advice.
Hey, I just saw Margaret LaForest on the chat from USS Salem, the only surviving heavy cruiser in the world in Quincy, Massachusetts.
We passed by a older cruiser, but we unfortunately don't get to pass Salem today. It'd be nice to see her again. She's very similar to us. I think I saw a rumor in here somewhere that Draginifel has joined us too. So hello to you. So we do have a ham radio crew that is with the ship. They are unfortunately not on board today, though. They will not be back on the ship until we return to our pier late May, early June, give or take. In case anyone is tuning in from land and watching us, I am watching a lovely crowd on the pier out here that came out to watch. And that's one of the things I love most about today is all the people who've come out to watch. Our pier was so full of people, and we've got like 6,000 of you watching tonight or watching online here. I love this.
I just saw Paul sign in from Battleship Cove. Hey guys, I hope your ships are doing well. Battleship Cove, of course, is home to USS Massachusetts, the South Dakota class battleship, and the destroyer Joseph P. Kennedy, the submarine Lionfish. A couple of PT boats are also up there. Forgive me for not remembering the numbers off the top of my head.
Kennedy's PT boat is there.
Oh, yeah, and one of John F. Kennedy's PT boats is also there.
We are right now passing the United States.
Yeah, you might just be able to see the stern of the United States coming into focus.
There is still a building between us and them, so unfortunately we don't have a great view just yet, but you can see her smokestack right there, and we'll be passing by her in just a minute. It's going to take us a couple minutes, so we're going to enjoy our view a little bit first, and we'll circle back to her in just a minute or two. Somebody asked here if every state has their own battleship, and almost everybody does. Montana never got a battleship. Hawaii and Alaska didn't get battleships; they got cruisers instead. But why did that? What happened?
All right, so Alaska and Hawaii were not yet states; they were still territories before we finished building battleships. So by the time they became states, we didn't build battleships anymore. Each of them had the large cruisers named after them. Alaska was completed. Hawaii never was. And poor Montana, they assigned that name to two different ships. Both of them were canceled. So that is the only state that existed at that time that never got a completed battleship named after her. That oftentimes ship names are related to how many votes that district has, how much money, taxpayer dollars that district has. So places that the Navy is looking for senators to vote for their funding, they'll name ships after them. Montana just didn't have that many votes. Not a big naval state that won.
How fast are we going now? We're up to about 3.5 knots. We are picking up speed here as we approach the bridge. We cannot assist with steering the ship. Our rudder is completely locked in place, which I'm sure all of our tugs appreciate. And our screws are completely locked in place as well. We are letting our tugs do all the steering for us. And they're doing a wonderful job, aren't they?
I see some folks talking about one of my favorite shows, War and Remembrance, on there. Battleship New Jersey, of course, shows up in that miniseries. Also shows up in Kindergarten Cop and An Officer and a Gentleman.
We're doing as possible. But for those of you who are landside and watching us go past, we see you over there. We see you. So make sure you wave at us. We'll wave back at you. Does the ship's horn still work? Absolutely. We actually sounded the horn when we departed the pier. Unfortunately, we didn't have audio on this stream at that time. We had it on our old stream, but if you watch enough of our videos, you'll hear it every once in a while. And yes, we are moving. We are just moving really, really slowly. Are you going to sleep better now that we're underway and this part's done?
Hell no. Now the work begins. Now that we've moved the ship, we've got 3 hellish months of dry docking the vessel. I'll sleep.
Today is really just day one of this project really beginning. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, our first stop here is the Paulsboro Marine Terminal. We are going to ballast the ship. We're going to take on 500,000 gallons. It's about 2,000 tons, primarily right there in the bow of the ship, the part of the section that you're seeing there. It's pretty much all the tanks forward of that forward gun turret. From there, we pull into the dry dock next Wednesday. They'll drain the water out mostly next Thursday. And then it begins. Want to refresh us on our projects for dry dock?
First, somebody earlier on in the chat asked if we had talked to other museum ships. And Missouri was one of the ones we talked to. She, of course, went into the dry dock in 2009. And so it was from them that we got the original information about ballasting the ship, what compartments we needed to ballast, what other sort of work we had to do. So we, of course, worked with them. We looked at Massachusetts' dry docking plan from, I believe that was 1990. Of course, Texas's work and a bunch of other ships. Really, this project only contains 3 major things that we need to do. We need to paint the underwater part of the ship. We need to replace the cathodic protection. And we need to check all of the through-hull openings and make sure they are still secure and intact. In addition to that, we're going to completely document the underside of the ship so that we have a good baseline of what it is in museum service so that we can plan scopes of work for future projects like this.
We've had a couple of people commenting about the ship with the smokestacks that was off on our starboard side. We have passed them now, so unfortunately we have had our opportunity to show you what they look like, but that's the SS United States. She is a historic ship in her own right. She's currently not open as a museum. So sorry, we can't show you her again, but if you rewind a little bit, you might catch her. Looks like we've got some folks from Red Bank tuning in. We are swiftly approaching Holtec. So hello to all of you guys watching over at Holtec. Looks like you guys are all tuning in. And we might even have somebody from Iowa tuning in today too. Iowa doesn't have any immediate plans for dry dock, if I recall.
Oh, but they're doing great work in lieu of dry docking. They've got a cofferdam that they put in the water that they're using to treat the most endangered sections of the ship around the bow where our shell plating is the thinnest. So just because they're not going into dry dock doesn't mean that they're not doing great preservation work right now.
When we replace the cathodic protection, will we be putting the correct type for the water type we're in now? Of course.
Yeah, so essentially, protection. Zinc would be for salt water, aluminum for brackish water, and magnesium would be for pure fresh water. We are mostly fresh water, but it is becoming more brackish over time. And since we're expecting to have the ship here for another 30 years, we're going to go with the aluminum anodes.
Roger, will do.
Wisconsin.
Hey, nice to see Wisconsin joining us as well. Yet another one of our lovely sisters here. Someone has mentioned that COD is keeping a low profile. Yet another museum ship that has a wonderful YouTube channel, even if they like to give us a hard time.
Well, they got to their dry docking before we got to ours, so maybe we deserve it there.
Of course, I think they came up with the best solution for helping get their ship to dry dock. They spotted a small hole in their ship and they put a wine cork in it. And it got them, kept the water on the outside until they managed to get to dry dock. Why is the river becoming more brackish?
Just with global warming, the saltwater table is moving further up. I'm not much of a ecologist on that. It's just something that's been measured here over time.
Alabama and Drum are down in Mobile, Alabama. Alabama's sitting in a cofferdam, so she has basically a wall around her. So she unfortunately can't go to dry dock, but she also doesn't need to. That's part of the reason that she's got that cofferdam. Drum, on the other hand, is completely sitting on dry land. So she is permanently dry docked, one might say. They instead have bigger issues of the water joining their ship as opposed to pulling the water away. So they actually have chains to keep her from floating away in a hurricane.
Alabama and North Carolina, Alabama and North Carolina are both like that. North Carolina's been doing some really cool work where they drain their cofferdam and then work on the shell plating. And that's an option that Alabama has. I really like that, and I'm looking at how it works over the long term. That's certainly something that we would consider doing for New Jersey in the future.
We will, of course, have some sort of event for when the ship comes back from dry dock. We're still holding off on details on that until we have a better idea of when that's going to be. We know we'll be in roughly 60 days. It'll be all over this channel, don't you? It's absolutely going to happen.
I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Don't ask me what I'm going to be doing in 2 or 3 months.
How much room do we have underneath the Walt Whitman fridge? You can start to see we're getting real close to the fridge here.
We should have something like 11 feet of clearance as we go under. We're currently at a air draft of 139 feet, and the bridge should be about 150 feet.
One of the things that's going to happen before we get underneath the Walt Whitman Bridge is they're actually going to stop traffic. So we might have a slight delay as we get confirmation that we are cleared to get underneath the bridge. But can you beat that view? It's so nice. We've been getting a lot of questions about USS the Sullivan. So she's up in Buffalo. She's also headed to dry dock soon, though I don't think details have been put out just yet. But I know that they have big plans for it. You might have heard a few years back that she tried to sink. It's the greatest fear of all of our ships. It's one of the things that we've been reminding people about, that could happen to us if we weren't able to make this trip to dry dock.
Another beautiful Fletcher-class destroyer. Unfortunately, for both Kidd and the Sullivans, they are not 6 miles away from dry dock. They have to go much further to get to their dry dock, and that not only increases the cost, increases the risk to the historic structure, and it makes the project planning so much more difficult. We only have to go 6 miles, and we have spent half a decade working on this planning to get to this point. And on a lot of things, I'm still shooting from the hip. So I can't imagine if we had to plan a really long 24 or 48-hour transit like they did on COD.
For those of you asking, we are currently on the Delaware River, where we have been for the last 20 years. We're going to stay on the Delaware River. We're to park in Paulsboro, and Paulsboro, where we're doing our ballasting, is just right on the other side of the river from the Philadphia Navy Yard. So we're staying on the Delaware River. We are flying some of the battle flags. We have 2 battle flags up.
And so we found on board 2 separate battle flags, one that we're pretty sure is from earlier in the 80s, although we can't quite put a date on it, and another one that we're pretty sure dates to 89-90 based on some of the phraseology that's written on it. It is labeled as Wetsu, we eat this stuff up, which was the saying on the ship under Captain, later Admiral Ronald Tucker, the ship's final commanding officer. So that really helps us date that artifact.
Somebody here is asking about our last big project. So yes, dry dock is what we're doing now, but we are also just finishing up redoing the ship's deck. You get a beautiful view of it from here. Oh, she's just gorgeous. We just finished that section up there on the bow last year. There's just a few sections left. We are going to finish that sometime this year.
Next year is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States Navy and Marine Corps. And so, of course, that happens here in Philadelphia. And then the year after is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. So we are expecting a lot of visitation here in the Philadelphia area. And we are doing all of this work to make the ship look her best for that increased visitation. I need a sandwich.
Okay, so we are going to take a brief pause here from our live commentary so we can take a breath. We are going to check in on our comments and keep an eye in as we go under this bridge. And we'll be tuning back in with commentary throughout the day. Okay, folks, we are back with our commentary here. We are just now passing Gloucester's River Park. And we have just gotten permission from the tug captain. We're going to sound the horn. So we had to turn the audio back on for that. The break in the audio was planned not so we wouldn't hear the bonk if we cleared the bridge, but mostly because we wanted to go out and see it ourselves. Sorry, we're a little selfish there. Don't worry, we will post all the videos and photos of that when that comes out. We did not hit the bridge. We cleared it just fine. But also, we are...
The compressor was turned off.
What?
Ryan, you want a round?
Want to fire the gun? Oh.
Sure, and they're on the other side of the ship, but I'm sure they can still hear it.
We are investigating our horn. It runs off an air compressor, so it takes a little bit. So we're just checking in on things. But we're going to try and fire the gun.
We'll turn off the compressor, and they weren't supposed to. All right, guys, we're going to fire one round.
So you're hearing our radio chatter with our gun crew. Gun crew today is a gentleman named Ken Kirsch. He served on board the ship during the Vietnam War. He generally is the one who mans the guns up. There she is. Hope you heard that. That's for all you folks watching shoreside. Got the chance to hear that. Unfortunately, the gun is a little ways away from where we are right now to be able to see it. And that's the ship's horn. Hopefully you guys could hear that as well. If you can, let me know in the comments. Some of you guys got to see the smoke from the guns at least. That's good. No, we can't fire the 16-inch guns, unfortunately. That's bad for the ship, bad for the tugboats, and bad for the neighbors. We are going to take a brief pause in our audio commentary again as we continue our efforts to try and eat some lunch today. But we will be tuning in with you throughout the day. We still have a ways to go on this cruise. We don't have a total deadline of our expected arrival yet, but we're working our way towards Paulsboro. Okay, folks, we are back. We are continuing our route down the Delaware River here. As a reminder, we are headed to the Paulsboro Marine Terminal. We're going to be ballasting the ship. We're going to take on 500,000 gallons of water. It's about 2,000 tons right along the bow of the ship. And it's going to weigh down the bow so that way we sit evenly on the blocks and we don't go down aft end first. I would not put any money on us hitting a sandbar. We're lucky enough that we have the best tugboat captains around. So they're not worried about it, neither am I. Fortunately, this is a major shipping channel. Large ships like us come through here all the time. So no, not expecting to find any sandbars out here. This is not the coast of Virginia or anything. It is a private dry dock. It is not still operated by the Navy. However, the Navy are the ones who built it. It was built when it was part of the publicly owned, Navy-owned Philadphia Naval Shipyard, and then expanded actually for us. So that way they could put us in there because we were completed in that dry dock number 3. So that is one of the reasons why we're going back there is because we fit there. She was built for us. Well, at least adjusted for us. We've been in that dry dock a few other times. So like I said, we were completed there in 1942. And then we made a trip there in late 1942 to do a little bit of work after she had done her sea trials. And then they brought us back in 1968 prior to going to Vietnam. We have some beautiful pictures from that time in the dry dock that you'll find elsewhere on this channel. We like to post them all of our Facebook page as well. Check them out there. And we'll be returning there again. So we're excited to go back to dry dock number 3. We do have a Coast Guard escort. Fortunately for us, even under normal conditions, the Coast Guard always has a strong presence around us. They have a small base directly across the river from us. So we constantly see the Coast Guard. So they're out here joining us today. So let's see. We will go back to Buffalo again at some point. Just not sure when. We don't have a set arrival time yet. We are making good time though. So I don't expect it'll be terribly long before we arrive. We are still at this point making, we're now up to 4.1 knots. The flag's flying off the front of the ship today. Someone put up the Navy's flag off of the jack.
That shouldn't be there.
That shouldn't be there. I'm not sure who put that up. Looks like they're hauling it down now. I think somebody wanted their flag flown. So we flew a flag for somebody and they're pulling it back down now.
We sell those online.
We do sell flags on our website, battleshipnewjersey.org. We'll fly a flag for you any day that you'd like. We will continue doing that while we're in dry dock as well.
Flying a couple flags today that'll be sold.
We are flying some flags today that are being sold. But the majority of the flags you're seeing on this live stream are our signal flags, who that line seems to starting to get a little slack, I think it might be. But the signal flags, they're real pushing in that wind today. They do not spell anything out, though each one of them has a different letter and number that it means. But today they're deliberately not spelling anything. We have other flags flying, including big holiday naval or big holiday ensigns. That's the big American flag. We've got a couple of our battle flags up as well, signal flags with our call sign, you name it, we got all the flags up. We will not be firing the 16-inch guns today. It would be cool. Oh, I wonder if we're flying the Navy's flag for 796. That was a suggestion on here. I'm not sure. For those of you unfamiliar, 796 is the newest New Jersey. She's set to be commissioned in the fall. She will be commissioned at Naval Weapons Station Earl here in the state of New Jersey. And the ceremony has tickets open to the public. You can Google them. We will make an appearance there. Don't you worry.
We the people, not the ship.
We the people, yes, not the ship. The ship will unfortunately not be getting her to Earl. We do dress the ship up for all sorts of events. Fortunately for us, our commissioning day is May 23rd, which happens to be right around Memorial Day every year. So we usually dress the ship then. And then we tend to dress it for Veterans Day, Pearl Harbor Day, those sorts of things, 4th of July. We love dressing the ship. It's a whole lot of work. We had a large team of people, including a great group of volunteers, participating in getting our flags ready. No no, the ship is not headed to the scrapyard. We're headed to the dry dock for repairs so we can continue to be a museum ship for many years to come. We expect the next time we'll be dry docked is in 30 years. So, you know, we'll be around at least that long. I expect we got at least another 100 years out of the ship. Unfortunately, we have already passed the SS United States, so you're not going to see it coming up soon. If you rewind a little bit, you can catch that, though.
Kennedy.
We are passing by the Navy Yard, though, and Kennedy will be making an appearance off of our starboard side here. She's a little difficult to see out in the distance there, but we'll get a better view of her in just a few minutes. Kennedy is a decommissioned aircraft carrier who's been sitting at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. That's our final destination for this trip anyway. She's been sitting there for a while. She is headed to the scrapyard eventually. There's a few other ships ahead of her in line, but she is apparently headed there soon.
This year.
This year, most likely. Ryan will show up on this live stream before the day is up. We had him for a while, but we have a few tasks left to do today. And yes, I believe right now he is patrolling the ship in case Tommy Lee shows up. Tommy Lee Jones shows up to try and come aboard with his helicopter and the catering crew and whatever.
Miss July 1989.
Yes, we are on patrol for Miss July 1989. That is a thing. As a reminder, we are headed to Paulsboro, so even though we're passing the Philadelphia Navy Yard, we'll be circling back. We will get to the Philadelphia Navy Yard next week. We have a second transit, so that's next Wednesday. This first transit's just getting us to Paulsboro so that way we can ballast. Did Ryan get any sleep last night? I highly doubt it. I didn't. Unfortunately, the dirt on the window is on the outside, and not something we can do anything about at this point in time. But but we do have a video on how to wash the windows, so worth looking for. However, you are getting the most authentic view you could of what it looks like from the bridge of the ship while the ship is underway. This is pretty much the same view that the sailors would have gotten while the ship was underway through these glass windows that are always a little bit damaged. So I'll take the dirt today. We have many salutes along the way. I am not sure if we plan on saluting the Navy Yard when we pass by. However, our gun crew today is under the command of Ken Kirsch. He served on board this ship during the Vietnam War. So we're glad to have a crew member on board and leading the charge for all of our salutes. We are providing you with the view that we have, unfortunately. Our bridge up here is chock-a-block full of windows, but also things in the way. So not so many great views as we pivot around. So we're mostly going to keep our same beautiful view here today. New Jersey does have a horn, and we have sounded it 3 times already today. We're doing it sporadically as the day goes by. The windows are designed to roll down. They don't like rolling down. It's also like 35 degrees outside, and this is the warmest place on the ship right now. So we unfortunately will not be rolling down the windows. They're also very stubborn as far as rolling. We don't have details on our transit time next Wednesday. We'll be pulling into the dry dock at high tide, but I can't tell you for certain what time we will be leaving Paulsboro. We do love to live stream, so don't worry. We will stream as much as we can. How big is the ship's largest flag? It's really big. It's got to be at least 40 feet.
Just about some curator numbers.
Oh, yeah. 8 or 9 curators long. The thing must weigh a good 60 pounds. The thing is huge.
A third of a curator.
Maybe a third of a curator. So we have a few photos of that we posted throughout the day today. And if you watched the live stream we had posted earlier, you can see it when it went up. We did shift colors. As the ship got underway, we pulled down the ensign from the back of the ship and put one up on the front. Right now, the ship weighs about 45,000 tons, give or take. So we are way below our usual weight. Combat load. There we go. Are there any guests or visitors on the ship? No, everybody on board today is here working. We have a large amount of folks from our line handlers and from our tug companies that are running around and making sure that everything is going smoothly, as well as all of us checking tanks today, which is our next stop. We are going to be sending people down shortly to do our next round of inspections. We're just making sure that we don't have any water on board, which makes all of us just sleep a little bit better at night knowing that that's the case. We've been looking so far today, haven't found any, but we're going to keep looking. And you are correct. We will be arriving at the dry dock on the 27th. That is next Wednesday. We are not down by Wilmington. We are pretty close to the Philadphia Navy Yard now. We're still a little bit north of that. We're not going as far as Wilmington. We're going just past the Navy Yard, Paulsboro. Why not do the ballasting outside the dry dock? There wasn't a pier available to us. Unfortunately, all the piers at the Navy Yard were occupied that were big enough to take us. So unfortunately, we are ballasting in Paulsboro instead, but that's okay. We're not so far away. We're still within visual distance of our dry dock. Did auction 2 spots to ride the ship, but they will be riding the ship from Paulsboro to the Navy Yard. So that happens next week. We are not listing any. My camera's just a little crooked. We are trying to maintain a slightly eccentric setup up here with the cameras. So apologies on that. Tell me if you need me. Panning the camera, folks, I keep trying to share with you is a little difficult. We've got a few barriers around us that makes it difficult. However, you can see our GoPro that we're also filming with. So unfortunately, the view from the other windows is a little restricted, though we can say hi to one of our tugboats going alongside us from that view there. As a reminder, we have 4 tugboats with us. They are doing all of the work today. We're just along for the ride. We do not have the ability to move under our own power. We're not using our own rudders. We're not using our screws. They are doing all the work. So if you see a tugboat captain today, make sure that you thank him for his hard work or hers. We've got a few women on those tugboats today as well. We do not fully need all 4 tugboats, but we definitely feel a little bit more comfortable by having all the tugs we need just to help maneuver us since we can't steer ourselves. But we definitely don't need that much horsepower. We are currently traveling at 3.7 knots with heading generally south. Fortunately, our tugs have a computer running up here with all of the specifics that I sort of know how to read. As a reminder, we're up here on the 04 level of the bridge, just ahead of our conning tower. I'm going to ask my lovely friend here, because I can't read this, what direction are we heading?
What direction? We are heading course of 226. 226,
which means south?
Well, we are southwest right now.
Southwest it is. Fortunately, we've got a few experts with us joining us for our cruise today. We've got experts on board in all the wonderful things, including making sure that we still have power as we move about. Is the New Jersey faster than the United States? No, we're not. She weighs a lot less than us. Her superstructure is made out of aluminum, which means that she is really light. You might be able to see, we're going to pivot the camera here, that there is an aircraft carrier off of our starboard side. That is the USS Kennedy. So she is decommissioned. She's at the Navy Yard until she gets taken to the scrapper. She's probably going to end up in Brownsville, Texas, sometime this year. For those of you who have perhaps missed the memo, the reason that we're doing this is we're eventually headed to the Philadphia Navy Yard for dry dock repairs. They're pretty much going to look at the bottom of the ship, give her a fresh coat of paint. We like to call that a shave and a haircut. So we're just going to make sure that the bottom of the ship is in good shape, inspect all the through-hole openings, there are a lot of them, especially where the propellers come through the ship, and just make sure that everything's secure. That's where I just lost Ryan too, our usual host of this channel. He is down below in one of the spaces below. He's checking out our propellers, just making sure that everything is nice and secure. We also have teams checking out our various other tanks today. I have been inside of our peak tanks. That's the ones all the way up at the bow that we're planning on ballasting. If you want to see the ship out of the water, if you go to battleshipnewjersey.org, you can get your tickets. So you can get underneath the ship. This is a pretty rare occasion. Battleship Texas was fortunate enough to be able to do this. And we said, if they can do it, so can we. We do love our friends over at Battleship Texas. We've been looking to them a lot about how their project went. Theirs was a much bigger project. They were out of the water for about a year. We're going to be out of the water for about 60 days. So someone keeps asking if other warships are planning on trying to help the SS United States. While we do all talk to each other, there's only so much we can do to help. She mostly needs a lot of money. So if you know somebody who has a couple $100 million, the SS United States would love your help, but also so would we. Going to dry dock before us. That was in about 2009. So she's doing beautifully after that dry dock. Wisconsin has the fewest miles on her, so she's doing just fine as well. And Iowa, the first of the class, she's sitting out in Los Angeles. We're all doing about the same. We all have been working on our decks recently in different capacities. Wisconsin got a new deck by the Navy, so she hasn't had to do too much work on that. And honestly, as far as I know, none of the 4 ships in our class leak. So we're all just doing just fine. Where's the ship now? So we're still here on the Delaware. We are swiftly approaching the Philadphia Navy Yard. So that's what that aircraft carrier is off our starboard side. You can also get a nice view of one of our tugboats here. As you can see, that tugboat is mostly here alongside us to give us a push as far as directions goes, instead of really pulling us. We do have tugboats doing the work of pushing us to make sure that we get where we need to go. But we also have some who are just making sure that we face the correct direction. Turning is a little bit difficult when you don't have rudders like we do, or we have our rudders, they just don't work. They're locked in place. Same as our screws. We unfortunately can't move under our own power. We will not be using the 16-inch guns for the salute. We're not allowed to do that. It would be really cool. Unfortunately, we can't do that. We did fit under the bridge. It was close. If you'd like to see pictures of us going underneath the bridge, expect to see them on our Facebook page soon. As you might imagine, we're a little busy today, so we're updating our various social media as we can. And we're trying to communicate with all sorts of people to make sure that we can share those images. If you don't see them yet, you'll see them soon. Is the ship capable of firing her 16-inch guns? So from what we've seen, we've looked at the machinery inside, and it seems like it's mostly intact. We lost a lot of our electrical equipment. So the mechanics of being able to get the shells where they need to be to actually load them would be not easy. But the barrel isn't full of concrete or anything like that, so there is some potential. Yes, that carrier is John F. Kennedy. We are going to get fairly close to her as the afternoon progresses. So don't worry, we're getting there. How many curators between us and the bridge? We are on the bridge. There are 0 curators between us and the bridge. This is the view from the bridge. The conning tower is about 2 feet behind where the camera is. So we are right up here. What's Ryan up to today? He has been tuning into the live stream as much as he can, but he is also responsible for his own tank inspection. So we're all trading off to see who can do inspections. Can we unblock the screws? We could. We made a video. We also have shorts of it on our various other social media of it basically just being some really big bolts that are big enough you could stick your hand through, that are holding the screws in place. So we could remove them if we really wanted to. We don't want to do that. We have no interest in having our screws. We like to keep our propellers exactly where we are. Unfortunately, we can't stream the water checks. That gets us down below and keep our propellers exactly where we are. Unfortunately, we can't stream the water checks. That gets us down below into the arm part of the ship, or at least into large parts of the steel parts of the ship, which means we lose cell service immediately. So unfortunately, we can't live stream that, but we'll see it on our various YouTube channels in the future. We've set a camera down best that we can. Y'all are correct. Our anchors and chains are in very good condition. They're still hanging off the bow of the ship. doing just fine. They're going to stay there throughout this entire process. We have a second set of anchors or anchor chains connected to a sort of anchor system that keep us in place. Normally, we pulled all that up over the last week or so. There will be many after-action reports about this cruise. Don't you worry. We will not be live streaming the entire dry dock process. That's 60 days and is just a technical difficulty being able to do that. So instead, we will be making our usual daily videos. Comes out every night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, which will be mostly dry dock related, to be honest. We will have some other content on there as well. We got to keep telling you about how important latte golf is and some of the other things. So, but a lot of it will be all over our YouTube channel right here. Hotspot relay signals for phones might work, except we have to climb down a whole lot of stairs and through a lot of really twisted places. We've tried all sorts of different systems to get cell service and Wi-Fi to weird parts of the ship. It just doesn't work, which is why we generally don't live stream. We can live stream today because we're up here on the bridge where we can get cell service, but most everywhere else, not so much. Do our flags spell out a signal? So the ones that you're seeing here on the bow are our friendship flags. They do not specifically spell anything. That is deliberate. They are in a pattern dictated by the Navy that does not spell anything. And it's dictated by the Navy, so no sailor gets any ideas and tries to spell something out. We are currently heading to Paulsboro Marine Terminal. It's going to come up on our port side. We have one more U-turn ahead of us, but we have to get past the Navy Yard first. Our Navy Yard is on the starboard side. You can see the cranes here on that side of the camera. You can also see the carrier John F. Kennedy over there too. Our horn today is sounded by compressed air, not by steam like it was historically. We do not have the steam going, unfortunately. We're not allowed to do that. That was a big rule by the Navy. What time will the ship be going by the Navy Yard? We're really close. We're working our way there. We don't have a great timeline for you about when exactly anything is happening today, but within the next half hour, I feel like we will pass by John F. Kennedy. Fortunately, the Navy Yards are really, you think 10 minutes? Yeah. Fortunately, our harbor pilot is here, and he says that it'll be about 10 minutes before we pass the Navy Yard. Excellent. Though in reality, that's kind of the Navy Yard next to us already anyway, just more the out-distant parts where all the parking lots are. For any of you Eagles fans out there, we are just now passing Lincoln Financial Field. Go Birds. Unfortunately, we can sound the horn only under restricted circumstances today, so we're firing them sometimes, or we're blowing the horn sometimes, but we're trying not to irritate our tugs too much. It is very, very loud. Someone has brought up a great point. I can't read all your comments, but if someone has suggested volunteering, we do take volunteers on the ship. We're currently on hold for new volunteers until we get back from dry dock in the summer. But our volunteers do all sorts of wonderful work around the ship. They paint things. They fix electrical problems. They work as docents and talk to the public. Anything we want to hear, anything we want to get done, our volunteers are there for it. They're great people. They will absolutely not be reactivating the Iowa-class battleships, including USS New Jersey, for any new wars. To reactivate the ship would cost billions upon billions of dollars and years and years and years of work. It would be cheaper to build a new one than to reactivate us. They will not be reactivating us. There's been a lot of news about it lately of various bloggers talking about it. It's not happening. We have already passed the United States, so unfortunately, I can't show you what she looks like right now. She is in our rearview mirror. You might notice if you look really closely that we've got some low-flying planes. We are also swiftly approaching the airport, so look for those as well. The ship will not be viewable tomorrow. She is at Paulsboro Marine Terminal tomorrow. She is viewable only from the water. She's kind of in a weird spot. That's where we're doing our ballasting. But then she goes over to the Philadphia Navy Yard next Wednesday, and the dry dock will be drained next Thursday. And then starting April 6th, you too can get your tours. So you can get underneath the ship, touch the bottom, see the propellers, see the rudders, and just get to be underneath that 45,000-ton battleship, which is is really a rare, amazing moment. If you would like to get tickets to tour the ship while she's in dry dock, make sure you go to battleshipnewjersey.org. Many of you have donated here on the channel. We appreciate your support. That can also be done at, once again, battleshipnewjersey.org. No, they're not making 16-inch railguns. They're certainly not going to put them on the ship. For reference, the Navy has also canceled their railgun project. They don't work, unfortunately. Yes, this is also a similar view to what Cher would have had when she did her music video, Turn Back Time, on board our lovely sister ship, Missouri, the Mighty Desk. Missouri today is a museum ship in Hawaii. She is beautiful. Go see her. She's sitting right next to the wreck of the Arizona. Right now, we are cruising at a really comfortable 4 knots. Hello, Mr. B's history class. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you asking, yes, there are dry dock tour tickets still available. Get them while you can. We are not under our own power. We are being tugged. Every once in a while, you'll see the tugboats show up on our starboard side. They're mostly cruising alongside us. They're here just to make sure that we face the correct direction. The tugboats who are doing a lot of the pushing, we are a little off frame. I promise you they're there. We can't move under our own power anymore, unfortunately. We are blowing the horn where we can, but try not to blow it too often because it's really loud and is not great for the tugboats. We do not still have oil on board the ship. The ship carried originally bunker fuel, switched over to distillate in the 80s. We have zero gallons of fuel on board, and we are so proud of that. Fortunately, the United States Navy cleaned out our fuel tanks, made them nice and clean prior to giving the ship over to us, which means that we do not carry fuel. Carrying fuel would be great if we wanted to get underway. We do not under our own power. And carrying fuel becomes a fire hazard. Our big project here is we're working on the hull. We are going to be repairing holes that we might find in the hull of the ship, as well as painting and things like that. And if we have fuel in the ship, we can't do hot work on the hull. So we're glad that we do not carry fuel. I see my dad is tuned in, so I have to say hi, Dad. Nice to see you here. Folks from Fall River are also here today. So that is the home USS Massachusetts and the JP Kennedy and Lionfish, the submarine. There are about 100 museum ships in this country. If you haven't been able to visit one, you got to come visit one. And for those of you who are not in the United States, that's okay. There's museum ships all over the rest of the world too. If you go to HNSA.org, there's even a map to show you where your closest museum ship is. Dry dock tours are exterior only. It's going to get you underneath the ship. Unfortunately, you can't get on board during that time. We will have very limited power and lights. And we honestly shut up large parts of the ship for this process just to keep everything safe. So it is just underneath the ship. If you would like to get on board the ship for a tour, that's okay. You can do that too, but you're going to have to wait until this summer when we get back to Camden. She doesn't carry fuel, but does she carry any propellant? So we do have lots of dummy bags of powder. They're mostly full of either concrete or cotton balls. But we do have a small amount of gunpowder on board today. We have been firing our guns sporadically as we pass pretty things, and our gun crew feels like firing them. So we do have an amount of gunpowder on board, but that'll come off the ship with them. If you can't tell, that is the Philadphia Navy Yard off of our starboard side here. The aircraft carrier just on the right side of the frame there, unfortunately kind of hidden by the frame in our windows, is the John F. Kennedy. She is slated to go to the scrapyard sometime this year. All told, today we are traveling a whole 6 miles, so not so far, and we're moving at about 4 knots, so therefore we're in good shape. The horn system does sound a little bit different today under compressed air than instead of steam. It's actually slightly quieter, but not a huge difference. We have pulled the horn 3 times or so today, and again, you can see it elsewhere on our channel. There's a great video that we made like 5 years ago, Bring the Ship to Life. You can definitely hear it in that one for sure. And if you rewind this, you might even find it if you can look for it. It's right when we got underway. There might be audio for that. For someone who mentioned it, there are no active battleships anywhere in the United States anymore. The age of battleships died with our class of battleships in the early 90s. The United States has many different types of ships, including aircraft carriers like the Kennedy, who we are just passing. You can see her on the right side of your screen there. But no more battleships, unfortunately.
We should be at Fort Mifflin in like 25 minutes.
All right. If you guys didn't catch that online, we're about 25 minutes from Fort Mifflin. So if anybody's watching there, we'll say hello to you there. And I think we're going to fire the guns at Fort
Yes, we
Mifflin,
are.
correct?
They're going to fire one of the historic cannons, and we'll fire back.
As a reminder, if you folks haven't heard, today's gun crew is being operated by Ken Kirsch. He served on board the ship during the Vietnam War, so we're glad to have him back on board today. He's on board most of the time as part of our staff here, but always nice to be back underway with a crew member.
Paulsboro 3-2. We're making good time.
Okay, we are now expecting a 3 o'clock arrival at Paulsboro. So as a reminder, we're going to the Paulsboro Marine Terminal before we come to the Navy Yard. So we're waving hello to the Navy Yard, and we'll be back in about a week. We're going to Paulsboro so that way we can ballast the ship. We're going to take on about 500,000 gallons, about 2,000 tons of water onto the bow of the ship so we can weigh it down. So that way our aft end doesn't weigh so much more than our front end, so we'll sit flat on the blocks when we go into the dry dock itself. And of course, we will make lots and lots of video content inside the dry dock, so stay tuned with this channel over the course of the next 60 days or so. We'll tell you all about it. The ballast water will not remain on board while we're in dry dock. We're actually going to take it off once we're high and dry. We worry that the water inside the ship will cause the steel of the ship to sweat, which makes adhering paint difficult. So we're actually going to deballast and then reballast again once we move the ship again. So there will be a lot of water coming on and off and on and off the ship throughout the day. For those of you wondering, we do not have control of the rudder or of our screws. Our tugboats are doing all of that work for us. Throughout today, we are showing you what our tugboats look like as they come into frame. Right now, they are the closest one to us is pretty far off our starboard side, so not quite in view here. But that is the John F. Kennedy on our starboard side there. Hello. The ballast water will be river water, which at this point in the river is brackish or so. So it's going to be removed and cleaned out to make sure that none of that salt continues to corrode inside of our tanks. The ballast water is going to go into tanks on the forward part of the ship. It's actually specifically designed for ballast water in those particular tanks. So it's going to be right at the very bow. If you check around on the channel, you can see we've got some diagrams of where all that is. So you can see the map and all that. Work that's happening in the dry dock is going to be pretty simple. It's mostly a shave and a haircut. So we are going to repaint the bottom of the ship. We're going to inspect all the through-hull openings, make sure that they're still secure. We had one that failed a few years back. So we are just going to make sure that that doesn't fail again. We were able to secure it internally, but we want to secure it externally too, just to make sure. We're going to look at where the propeller shafts leave the ship and make sure that they are nice and secure. They need additional packing that has corroded or degraded over the past 30 years or so since the last time they were packed. We're going to change the cathodic protection out. So we have a series of anodes at the bottom of the ship who protect us from electrical current in the water. We've been using a cathodic protection system installed by the Navy for salt water. We're in freshwater, and it's turning brackish, so we're going to make sure that we have anodes to protect us in that brackish water. Oh, and there's our tugboat, got into our frame again. Doesn't feel nice. Yes, we did sink an island once in 1968, which is a pretty good story. So the ship was sailing past Hanmot Island, and a shore battery decided to fire at us. And our captain, Captain Snyder, decided that he didn't like that. So they fired back with these big, beautiful 16-inch guns. And part of the island sloughed off into the sea. And the reporters on board at the time headlined it in newspapers around the world, Battleship New Jersey sinks an island. So She gets a little credit. The ride is exceptionally smooth, folks. She is moving very, very smoothly. We're only moving 4 knots, but even while the ship was out at sea, she always had a pretty smooth ride. We're very fortunate today that absolutely nothing is bumping us around up here. I get seasick just looking at ships, and I haven't noticed at all. You will get to see the keel in our videos once we get her out of the water, so expect to start seeing that probably not next week. She'll be high and dry late next week, so it might be the week after before you really get to see that keel. So look forward to that. The smaller boats that are alongside us, some of them are police boat escorts and the Coast Guard escorts that are with us. And we've been trying to keep the spectator boats at a distance. So that's what the some of those boats are for. The carrier that we are passing by, that is John F. Kennedy. She is a decommissioned aircraft carrier slated for the scrap. Past the Navy Yard, or at least the Kennedy. We have a few other boats here in the yard. So the Philadelphia Navy Yard is actually it's definitely water, just to be clear. It's water. The Philadelphia Navy Yard, while no longer primarily operated by the Navy itself, it's primarily a private yard. The Navy still has a presence here, which is why we see a lot of these decommissioned ships waiting their fate. But they'll also see active ships come through here to get work done on them. So the Philadelphia Navy Yard is an excellent example of a public yard going private. And in just a minute here, we're going to get one of the best, exciting moments of this trip. So our final destination after trip number 2 is dry dock number 3 here at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. And I promise you that is our final destination, even though we're not getting there today. And we're going to get a brief glimpse of it from where we are. So she is going to appear just off our starboard side here in just a minute. She's just on the other side of the ships. Now, dry dock number 3 is really special. She has been at the Philadelphia Navy Yard for a long time. Oh, there's a crew on the Kennedy watching us. That's nice. So dry dock number 3, while not built necessarily for us, she was expanded for us to make sure that they could support us. So we love to return to the Philadelphia Navy Yard. We were completed there in 1942. We had some final outfitting there after our sea trials. And then in 1968, the ship was brought back there for a 3rd visit. So that way we could get refit prior to the Vietnam War. Unfortunately, folks, because I'm kind of tethered to a camera here and to a computer, it's a little bit difficult to show you some of these other places. Let's see what we can do off to the side here. But that is the Philadelphia Navy Yard we're passing, where we will be returning in just about a week or so. So this will be our 4th time in dry dock number 3. Atlantic Ship Repair is going to be doing the work while we're over there, sometimes called Philly Ship Repair in this branch of it. Here she is. So dry dock number 3, you can just sort of see as we're passing Kennedy here. You're going to see these red brick buildings. We see a tugboat there, and then we're going to have another little building, and then where the big hall is, that's our dry dock. That's dry dock number 3. So our blocks are already set up. They are expecting us. Captain Joe. Anyone hear me? I was hoping we could raise our tugboat captain and see whether we could blow the horn at the dry dock, but we'll see if we can raise them. We have to get their permission before we can blow the horns. But yes, you can see dry dock number 3 in crystal clear view there. You can see this crane off on the right-hand side. That's the really tall thing. And the hole that's next to it. They've already set up the blocks. We saw them before. You can see them on a video from a few weeks ago right here on this channel. So the Philadelphia Navy Yard has been a major shipbuilding yard for the entire. Can we sound the horn?
Of course.
Thank you. Okay, folks, if you can still hear me, you might lose me. We're going to try and sound the horn, which requires a slight detour for me. If you folks caught that, that was our ship's horn. We like to give a nice salute to the Navy Yard as we pass by them.
All stations, when we approach Fort Mifflin, we will be firing the saluting gun.
On the radio there, that is Ken Kirsch. He is he is our gun crew today. As a reminder, he served on board this ship during the Vietnam War. So it is excellent to have him on board today for this cruise. He's certainly been on board the ship while it's been underway before, but it's excellent to go back. So as we have just about passed the Navy Yard here, we're going to pivot around a little bit. So the iconic big crane here at the Navy Yard. It's one of those things everyone notices. And you can see one of our tugboats. As a reminder, our tugboats are doing all the work today, so we thank them so much. We are using the dry dock that is right by the Walt Whitman Bridge. That's the one we're going to. That's the one we've just passed. It's the only one in the area that can take us.
Is there anything you need to be doing? I can take this for a little bit.
If you want it for a while, I'll give it to you.
It's up to you. I don't know if there's something.
The dry dock does not have a crane anymore that can hold our turrets. Though supporting the turrets with the cranes, the Navy Yard is actually the best story. So the person in charge of that back in 1942 was convinced that the crane could support the turret, but they weren't officially rated for it. So what the person in charge of it did is when they lifted the gun turret up, he stood underneath it and he said, well, if the crane fails, I'm at least not doing the paperwork about it. Unfortunately, that crane is not there anymore. And they actually didn't install the turrets in the dry dock itself. They installed it while she was floating. They didn't install it while she was under construction. And she wasn't built in dry dock number 3. She was built in the slipways next to dry dock number 3, and then completed in dry dock number 3. So they had to take her back out of the water so that way they could attach the propellers and the rudders and that sort of thing. So we are going to be firing our saluting gun at the Red Bank Battlefield, which is off to our port side here. Everybody is watching from over there. We say hello, and we're going to say hello in a very loud way in just a moment. But the reason we're not entering the dry dock today is we have to make a pit stop at the Paulsboro Marine Terminal. We are going to be ballasting. We need to take on about 2,000 tons, 500,000 gallons. That's going to weigh down the bow of the ship, so that way the ship sits level. Right now, our aft end sits a little bit lower than our front end, which means we wouldn't sit on the blocks very well. And yes, we are moving completely by tugs. We're not moving our own power. It would be lovely to move under our own power, but we are not allowed to do that, and that would be fabulously expensive to get the engines back up and running. Probably a couple of $1 billion. Though, hey, if you want to help us get there, we'll take every donation you can give. All of that goes right back to the restoration of the ship. Dry docking, of course, first. You have to be docked to ballast. We are going to dock the ship to take on water. We're not taking on ballast water while underway. That would just be very stressful. So we are going to be docked to do that, and we cannot be dry docked to ballast. We need to ballast first before we get into the dry dock. We could have, in theory, ballasted at our original pier, but with the amount of water that was underneath us, we felt it was a little bit safer to ballast at another pier. We will stay floating and not get stuck in the mud. Yep, we'll be moving into that next Wednesday. Lots of video content on it. So stay tuned on this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Join 250,000 of your closest friends who love Battleship New Jersey. Dry dock for the bridge. Yeah, there is unfortunately not a dry dock on the New Jersey side that can support us. We're not just a really long ship or a really heavy ship, but we are a ship that holds our weight in a really strange way. Because of that, we need a dry dock that can support all of that pressure in a few select points. Think of it like stepping on a crayon in the carpet. By putting all that weight on one small little point, it could just snap. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. So the dry dock number 3 is what can support us. She was actually specifically strengthened to support us back during World War II. So we're really glad. That's a GoPro. Yes. You have to click the screen. So we have the ability to go back there. Back in the late 1990s, when they were deciding the fate for this ship and they knew she was going to become a museum, there was a lovely group of people, the Homeport Alliance, that's our museum's actual name, who got together to decide to find a home for New Jersey. And the Homeport Alliance really wanted the ship to come to Camden. And one of the reasons for that is we are only 6 miles from dry dock number 3 that can support us, which means that we have a really great ability to keep the ship here. You're going to get a great view in just a second of the plane that just flew right over us, that is like coming right down our bow. Yeah, she's just coming over the bow now, just coming into frame. We are really, really close to the Philadelphia airport.
That means we're close to Fort Mifflin.
We are very close to Fort Mifflin. So we can basically see the pilot of that plane. We are so close. The names of the tugs. Ooh, okay. So I can see one tug from where I am here, and she is named. I can't see the name on her tug.
One of the tugs' name is Robert E. McAllister. They're all named after McAllister family members.
Okay. If you guys didn't catch that online, they're all named after McAllisters. So that is the tug company we're working with today. Well, let's see. So when the ship gets pulled into the dry dock and they've closed the case on, so we're fully in that, and they start lowering her down and taking the water out, there will be a diver in the water. The diver's job is to make sure that we sit on the blocks properly. If our blocks happen to be on a through hole opening, that's a pressure point we could quite possibly punch through the ship. And we don't have access to those through hole openings, which is what we're here to repair. So there will be a diver down in the water to inspect that. They are from the shipyard themselves. They are the experts in that kind of thing, and making sure that they are in the right place and getting the ship to the right place. The visibility in the water, I can tell you, is not great here on the Delaware. It's pretty muddy. We've sent divers down before to inspect our hull in Camden. Our water actually also moves really fast here. Won't be a problem for the divers in the dry dock because it's basically a sort of swimming pool. It's a closed system there. But in Camden, it's very difficult. We've actually sent a GoPro down with our divers last time, and they reported back that you could see them go into the water and then just darkness. No, we do not box in the water here on the Delaware River, though I wouldn't be surprised that we haven't seen them before. Many of the people involved in today's operation have been around with us since the last time that we moved the ship about 20 years ago. So we're really glad to have those folks around this long. So who's walking on the deck down there? We have a lot of folks from the different tugs on board the ship today. They're communicating with the tug saying, hey, can you give us a push this way or that way? And they're here to handle lines when we need to connect to tugs and to the pier and all of that. So that's just sort of walking around down there. We have a few folks on board today, both from the tug company and from the ship doing inspections. She'll be back in Camden after a 60-day dry dock. So we expect to be back late May. Hopefully opening early June. We are looking forward to getting back to our berth and getting the ship reopened. For those of you who can't wait that long, we are doing dry dock tours. You can get underneath the ship. This is a really rare opportunity to be able to get underneath the ship. You can touch the bottom of the ship. You can see the propellers. You can see the rudders. This is a really rare opportunity. Even when the ships, and they were doing this more frequently, it was very rare to be able to see it. Be able to do this. If you would like to sign up for a dry dock tour, you can go to battleshipnewjersey.org. That is where you can sign up. We're doing tours starting April 6th every Saturday and Sunday for 8 weeks. So 8 weeks only, so check it out. Yes, it has been 20 years since the ship's last moved, which means that today is a particularly historic moment. They do this very, very rarely. So we are very lucky to be able to do this today. The ship hasn't been on to a dry dock since 1991 when she was decommissioned. So we're very getting back getting this work done. It'll probably be another 30 years before we do it again. We will make lots of video of the ship out of the water. Don't you worry, it'll be all over this channel. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell, and we'll tell you all about it when it does. Also going to tell you guys, since you've asked a few times, I think for the first time today, I actually sort of felt the ship moving. We're currently making a little bit of a turn, and the wind is picking up pretty good. It might be my imagination, though. She's not moving too much. It's been a very smooth ride. We are moving exclusively with tugboat power, but we are moving. You can see us slightly turning here. Turning the ship is not as easy as it once was, so we are slowly turning. The veteran price for dry dock tours is just for veterans of this particular ship, so keep that in mind. She's not really creaking or groaning. We're keeping our eyes out. For those of us who've been doing tank inspections today, we got the chance to look in, to really climb through some of the waterline tanks. We're inspecting for water and damage and things like that. And the sounds down there are interesting. We're pretty much just hearing the sounds of the tugboats. When I was down there earlier, it sounded kind of like a jet. It was particularly loud. So there's definitely some of that sound. For those of you asking, Ryan is on board. He is currently doing some of those tank inspections. When he is done, he will come back to our live stream. We'll trade off, and I'll go do a tank inspection for a while. We do offer sleepovers on the ship. We do them most weekends when the ship is at her pier in Camden. We expect that we'll be starting that back up in the summertime. So look for those. There will not be a normal video tonight on channel at 7 o'clock like our usual. This is our video for the day, unfortunately. But, I mean, can you beat this, guys? This is as good as it's going to get. The signal flags that are flying that you see up here on the bow do not spell out anything in particular. They are in a specific pattern dictated by the Navy that just doesn't spell anything. The Navy gives them a pattern so that way they don't try and spell anything out. For those of you asking, my name is Libby. I work for the Battleship. Normally I'm the person behind the camera, but today you get to hear my lovely voice. Yes, we do sleepovers with Ryan. If you send us a message at education@battleshipnewjersey.org, we can set you up, and you too can have a sleepover with the Ryan Zemansky. So for those of you who haven't heard, we are headed to the Paulsboro Marine Terminal, where we are ballasting the ship over the course of the next several days. We anticipate the ballasting will take 4 days. We've given ourselves wiggle room to have 5 days, just in case it takes a little bit longer. Our ballasting work is going to include taking on 2,000 tons. That's about 500,000 gallons of river water. That's going to go into primarily our tanks right off the bow. The USS Olympia that we saw at the beginning of this video generally can be seen right off the port side of the ship. We have passed her about an hour and a half ago now. So she unfortunately is outside of frame now, but she's from the Spanish-American War in World War I. She brings the unknown soldier almost all the way to Arlington. I believe it takes as far as Annapolis. She is beautiful. Check her out. She is open for tours as well. We are currently still on the Delaware River. We are approaching the airport or so. We have passed the Navy Yard. So for those of you who know the area, we're somewhere between the Navy Yard and the airport, which is a fairly small area. We're getting really close to Red Bank Battlefield. Ballasting the ship is important because the back of our ship sits down so much lower than the front of our ship, which means that when we hit the blocks, we would hit the aft blocks first. That's where all of our weight is. We could break the blocks. We could punch a hole in the back of the ship. We could break the dry dock. Lots of potential for damage. So that is just a safety precaution for us. So something the Navy Yard required of us, something that we felt needed to be done. The Olympia's not headed to dry dock anytime soon. She has this really cool system to delay her dry dockings. She actually holds the record for the museum ship with the longest time since dry docking. It's been something like 80 years. Longer than that. I think it's pre-World War II. She has a cofferdam. So there are two different kinds of museum cofferdams. Some cofferdams go entirely around the ship and you can drain them out and treat them like a dry dock. Olympia's cofferdam is more of a giant suction cup system. They have a little, essentially like bubbles they can stick onto the side, and they can work on the water line of the ship from inside of that little bubble. We do have some videos from visiting Olympia and her cofferdam on this channel. Check that out as well. If you haven't heard, we have like 1,500 videos on this channel. We'll tell you all about anything you want to see. The ship is not battle ready. She is not going to combat anytime soon. It would take years and years of work. That was our saluting gun. If you just heard that, we are passing Red Bank Battlefield now. I can see a huge crowd on the banks there. And that fortunately has been a great spot for watching the ship go by even 20 years ago. So it's nice that we get to continue that tradition. Olympia is still floating. When the water gets really, really low tide, she's been known to touch bottom, but she is still floating, just like we always are. That's how we were able to depart today. It's that we are not sitting in the mud. One of the things I think is particularly interesting, you can see off our port side here, we have a series of ships waiting alongside. I think they are waiting for us to pass. We have cleared out a really big path for us because we're a dead ship tow. We're not moving under our own power. We want to make sure that we don't have to deal with any traffic. So I think these guys are waiting for us. These folks alongside.
Which these guys?
Yeah.
They're all at anchor.
All at anchor. Cool. I'm going to warn you guys, the resolution is subpar because it's an authentic resolution. We are looking through the ship's actual windows up here on the bridge, and they're a little scratched and a little dirty and a little UV exposed, so that's okay. We do have other cameras out and about, not have that problem, so expect to see more higher resolution footage when we get back to land side here. The fact that we can live stream from out in the middle of the river on a dead ship, I say, is remarkable in and of itself. Yes, we do have we have a 108-foot beam, not a 106-foot beam. We are even closer to the size of the Panama Canal than you'd believe. The Panama Canal is 110 feet, but we did make 10 trips through the canal over the course of her career. We not doing any amateur work, radio work on the ship today. Today, the riders are only the absolute necessary people. So the folks from our tugs, that's another shot from our guns. Folks from our tugs and the people doing tank inspections and absolutely essential personnel only today. Yes, Ryan will be back when he is done with his tank inspections. He is currently checking out the propeller shafts, which unfortunately is like 700 feet aft of us and like 60 feet below us. So he's got a long way to go. We still have a little bit of a ways to go. We're going to make a U-turn before we pull into Paulsboro. So we still have a little bit of this cruise to go. Yes, today our guns are just doing powder. We're not firing live rounds. That's the saluting gun. It only ever fires powder. It was never designed to fire live rounds. It just does powder. And our gun crew today is there it goes again. It's under the control of Ken Kirsch. As a reminder, he served on board the ship during the Vietnam War. So we are particularly glad to have him on board with us today. How hard is it to change the packing seals around the prop shafts? So that's why we're doing this in dry dock. So those actually need, there There's another gunshot. Some support, so that way we can take the existing packing off and put new packing on. We're going to take a look at the entire setup and see if there is more than the standard amount of packing that we can include, just to make sure that it stays really, really secure. We have no interest in turning our propellers ever. So we can add additional things to keep them from rotating and keep the water on the outside. Museum ship rule number 1, keep the water on the outside at all costs. When the Navy gave us the ship, they gave us several rules, but the most important rule they gave us says that keep the water on the outside, worry about everything else later, just keep the water outside, and then we'll figure out the logistics. So unfortunately, we can't watch them clean the gun. We're kind of tied into the ship right now, and we can't really move around, and they're really far away from each other. However, if you keep watching this channel over the course of the next 6 months, and you peruse some of our other videos, you will definitely see that we have done some videos on the saluting guns before. We do have pumps on board right now. We haven't had to run any. We didn't think that we would, but we do inspections to make sure that we don't have to run those pumps. We have them at the ready. We've got a large maintenance team on board today who is keeping an eye out for that. And our lovely curator has returned from his inspections. Do you have anything you want to share?
Okay.
Hello, this is Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. We just got back from our inspections of the underside of the ship, and we continue to be bone dry. So that is good news. I will be able to sleep tonight.
How dirty are you?
Are we talking physically dirty or like mentally dirty? Because those are going to be different metrics.
Being able to see you right now, I can tell you're actually less filthy than I imagined. You got a little rust on your knees, but otherwise.
Yeah, no, because we've run through these routes several times over the last couple of days, I think I picked up all the rust during those previous run-throughs. So this time it's actually pretty clean.
How we're powering ship systems. I'm going to take a look. It's yours.
Okay, we have a question on here. How are we powering ship systems? We have a generator plugged on board. It certainly cannot run every single system, but our lighting is perfectly fine. And we aren't really running anything else. We aren't running any heaters or air conditioners. We aren't running any of the pumps. Like really lights are all that there are. And the outlets, which of course is what our compressor for the horn is plugged into, and our 1MC and that sort of stuff.
In breaking news, I've just received photos. The team at the dry dock, we just passed them and they sent us some photos. They're out there watching us as we go by. So they seem to be really looking forward to us coming.
I can imagine them sitting there like, where are you going? We're over here. You missed the turn. Pull a Yui. The ship's horn would have normally been powered by auxiliary steam produced by the boilers. However, we're not piping steam through the original steam pipes. We don't trust them to hold pressure. And of course, we're not lighting off the original boilers. So we hooked up an air compressor that's, I want to say it's about 120 PSI. One of those big, I want to say it's 4 or 5 feet tall compressors. And it's just plugged into an outlet. And it is the compressed air from that is plugged into the former steam line. So when we open the compressor valve, it blows the air through that steam line, and that's what sounds the horn. When will we stop today? We'll probably, whenever we get to the Paulsboro Marine Terminal, we are going to stop the live stream. I'm not sure if we'll be able to keep running it while we're adjusting mooring lines or if we're going to have to help with that, in which case we'll have to step away from the stream. Okay, got a question. The bronze color around the base of the gun barrels, is that just literally, or does it serve a function? That is the part of the gun barrel that recoils into the gun. It recoils about 42 inches when it's fired. So you can see this on the 16-inch gun barrels at the bottom part of the screen. That would normally be bare metal covered in a grease. And that grease for Missouri and New Jersey in the Pacific would have been a gold color. For whatever reason, Iowa and Wisconsin in the Atlantic, it tended to be a black colored grease. I have no idea why the supply chains were different, what was different about it. But that just, one, it acts as a hydrophobic barrier that prevents water from running down the gun barrel into that opening into the gun turret. And two, it helps lubricate the gun barrel as it is recoiling back into the gun barrel. Now, obviously, we do not keep it oiled today. It is sealed up tight, so we painted it to look like it would in service. So like all of my answers, there's no such thing as a short answer, and it's some of both. It's sort of our livery, but it was a functional thing at one time. Did New Jersey serve during the Battle of Midway? Battle of Midway was fought in June of 1942. We were not commissioned until May of 1943. In fact, after the Battle of Midway, they looked at turning New Jersey into an aircraft carrier, as that became the dominant form of warfare. And they decided that we were so far along that it would take longer to cut everything down, put a flight deck on it, and then finish it. And then they expected the war would be over. It would be easier to just build new aircraft carriers from scratch. We're about the same size as an Essex-class aircraft carrier, but since we're not purpose-built, we get very narrow at the bow. Our hangar would be smaller, so while we would have much more armor, 12 inches as opposed to 4 inches on the belt, 6 inches as opposed to 4 inches on the deck, we would be able to carry about 1/4 less aircraft. We've got some questions about when we are going to be leaving Paulsboro. That will be on the 27th. That will likely be early afternoon or late morning, but we do not have an exact time yet. We will absolutely post that before then. If I had 5 minutes alone, where would I go to nerd out while the ship is underway? Well, I'm there right now. I am on the bridge Battleship behind the camera. Being on the bridge of a battleship while she's underway has been a dream of mine since ever since the battleships were decommissioned. Why would it be cheaper to build a new battleship than to reactivate the existing one? Well, because the existing one is over 80 years old, so much of the interior of the ship, when you put it back under pressure, would not function properly, and you'd have to go through and replace it. It's just easier to build from the keel up. Plus, the ship is 80 years obsolete. There are new hull forms. There are new weapon systems. Not only would you have to fix the ship, but you would have to retrain the Navy how to use guns like this. You'd have to remanufacture parts for this type of gun. It would just be easier to develop a whole new gun system and then have those parts in maintenance. When I am 18, can I work on New Jersey? Absolutely. Check our job posting page. We hire tour guides and a bunch of other positions that are 18 years and older. You can also come on and volunteer. If you are between 12 and 18 years old, if you bring a parent with you, you can volunteer on board. If we had a workout routine of running from one end of the ship to the other, what would be the most physically challenging part? So the Marines actually had a workout routine on this ship. In the 1980s, they would run 5 laps of the main deck for every. When I run around the ship, the most difficult parts are as I get to the bow, there's that little uphill section. But really, the more difficult part is going down the side of the ship as you have to turn around the various 5-inch gun mounts. So, and it's really tight going through there. So at any sort of speed, it's more like you're jumping to the left as opposed to turning to the left. And then that keeps me from getting in a rhythm when I'm trying to do a distance run. Do we have the capacity to make new guns this size anymore? Again, no such thing as a short answer. The answer is yes and no. We could not right now make guns of the same type as New Jersey, but the technology's advanced so far that we could easily spool up and make a newer, more modern type of gun that's a similar caliber, or at least a similar capability. What would we do if pirates from Philadelphia came and tried to board the ship? We'd call Chief Casey Ryback to come help us. We've got a couple of people commenting on pre-atomic steel. That matters with really precise instrumentation like MRI machines. It does not matter for what the battleship is made out of. So if I wanted to build a new battleship, it would not matter if it was post-atomic steel or pre-atomic steel. We have a comment on here. I don't care if a battleship is obsolete. I think we need a new one. And I would disagree that battleships are obsolete. The weapon systems have not been developed to do the same sort of shore bombardment that battleships are capable of. So, but nothing else does that job nearly as well. So there's certainly still a place for a power projection asset that can go close to shore and do shore bombardment in the modern Navy. It just will have a large cost, and maybe more important, Navy and the military in general is having trouble meeting their manpower requirements and recruitment down. So large ships like this one are difficult to manage, and I suspect we're going to see a reduction in the number of aircraft carriers in the near future. With 5,000 or 6,000 men at a ship, it's just too difficult to man them.
$15 minutes.
15 minutes for what?
Before this, get to our destination.
Oh, yeah. That's like Tom-Tom's it? We have someone on here says they just sent us an email. Forgive me for not checking my email for a couple of days. We don't really have great internet on board right now.
Sorry, that's just important.
Not going to get much time at my desk over this weekend because of the ballasting operations. Hey, we've got an ahoy who's watching. What size is the saluting gun? It is a 2-pounder saluting gun that is 40 millimeters in diameter. While it would normally fire a 2-pounder charge, we're only firing about a 1/4 pound out of it right now. That's what's on the left. We are about 15 minutes away from our destination right now. If you're looking at
Waypoint, sorry.
if you are looking at the left-hand side of the screen, that is Paulsboro Marine Terminal. That's where we're going to end up. So we're going to pull up parallel to it. We're going to do a U-turn, and they're going to push us in to the berth. I think they're going to have us in berth 1, which is at the end that is closer to us, as opposed to, I think it's berth 4, which is the far end where you see that red hulled tanker. So that is where we're going to be for the next couple of days. Yes, 2 pounds is the weight of the powder charge for the saluting gun. So a 1-pounder would be 37 millimeters, a 2-pounder would be 40 millimeters, a 3-pounder would be a 57 millimeter. They tend to go up to 6-pounders, and then they just go to the diameter. That's a very archaic, like 1880s, 1890s weight for guns. And this particular gun is something that wouldn't look out of place on Olympia, that has been carried over as just a saluting gun. Once upon a time, it would have been used as a frontline weapon. Will the ship be floating in the dock, or will the caisson be placed and the dock drained? So while we are here at Paulsboro, the ship will still be floating the whole time. When we go into dry dock, we're going into dry dock on the 27th. The caisson is being put in behind us on the 27th. That'll probably take us to the evening time. So we're going to float in the dry dock overnight. And then, assuming the plan doesn't change in the next week, it'll be the morning of the 28th, we'll start to drain the dry dock, and probably the evening of the 28th, that the dry dock will be completely drained and we'll be sitting on the blocks.
Ships that were coming in, bringing other things in.
From Denmark?
Yeah. They would roll them off, the side was right, they would roll them off.
It feels like we are starting to turn. You're going to see Paulsboro come across our bow, and then we'll start pointing the other direction up the river that we just came from. Question here, how long would it take to reactivate the battleship? Assuming they're not changing any major systems, it would likely take close to a full year to reactivate her. That is fairly standard for other reactivations, the Vietnam one, the 1980s one. The 1950s one was a little bit quicker, but that was her shortest time out of mothballs. They didn't have to replace hardly anything. In fact, they removed some of the World War II systems without being replaced, such as 20-millimeter guns.
Here's a great question. Somebody's asking what you need to be able to volunteer. We take if you've got skills, we'd love to use them. If not, that's okay. We have lots of volunteers who talk to the public, and we'll teach you what to say. We have volunteers who paint, scrape paint, and polish brass, as well as our skilled volunteers, like our electricians or plumbers, those sorts of people. So if you want to volunteer, send us an email at volunteers@battleshipnewjersey.org. You can always go to battleshipnewjersey.org, our website, to get all the information on that. We expect to be back in Camden in June, and we'd love to get new volunteers started with us.
My only requirement is that you have a pulse. I hate robots and I hate zombies.
And you've got to be over at least 12 years of age. If you're under 18, you got to come with an adult. But unfortunately, we don't take volunteers under 12. That's our big rule. So what happened to all the live rounds for the ship when they decommissioned these ships?
Powder and shells for 16-inch guns were maintained in storage up until about 2012. At that time, once Iowa and Wisconsin, the last two in reserve, were turned over to their museums, the Navy started to demilitarize them all. I heard that the nitrocellulose cordite propellant, which had started to deteriorate at that point, keep in mind it would have been 70 plus years old, was destroyed. I'm not sure how. I have heard that the black powder charges that set that off were sold to reenactment groups. I haven't been able to confirm that, but I have heard that from several individuals. The shells had their composition D burster charges removed, were filled with concrete, and were distributed to the various museum battleships. So the ones you see in our parking lot or on board the ship today, or around some of the other museum battleships you might visit, were the last of the shells that were maintained in reserve. So we would, if something happened and the ship had to be reactivated, they would have to start with retooling up new ammunition for these guns, which is good because while it was still perfectly good after 40 years, after 80 years, it deteriorated to the point where we would have to make new stuff anyway.
We're getting some great questions about what you can see when the museum is open when you come on board. And to be honest, you can see a whole lot. We've got about a 2-mile tour route. So we take you through the engineering spaces. You can climb into the gun turrets, see where the crew slept, get up here on the bridge where we are today, see the missiles and where the missiles are controlled from. So there's a whole lot to see. However, we're not going to be open on board the ship until this summer. We're hoping to reopen late May, early June. In the meantime, if you want to tour the ship, we're doing tours underneath the ship at the Philadphia Navy Yard. You get to get underneath the ship, see the propellers and the rudders, maybe even touch the hull if you feel so inclined. We're doing those in April and May. Again, go to battleshipnewjersey.org to sign up for a tour.
What kind of national emergency would require the activation of a battleship? That's hard to say. It's been a couple different things that have caused these ships to be reactivated in the past. Obviously, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, those were pretty direct things. Her reactivation in the 80s was not based on a war. It was just deciding to expand the Navy. And so they went to reserve ships that could be reactivated quicker than new ones could be built. It would likely take a major naval war in which a number of American ships were lost that would require us to be reactivated. More likely, I think, not a pure reactivation, but if there was some sort of local regional disaster, an earthquake, a huge fire, tornado, something like that, that displaced a ton of people. Many museum ships are used as command centers by the various first responders and other folks. There are a number of beds on board. It's not outside of the realm of the possible to have people stay on board in emergency if they're displaced. I could easily see the ship being taken over as some sort of emergency center, much like schools are and other government buildings. And I think that's far more likely this day and age than these ships being returned to service.
So, of course, we're doing this entire project because we are headed to dry dock for repairs. But we are not the only museum ship to dry dock. Missouri is the last of the Iowa class to do it. She did in 2009.
2009.
So she has no immediate plans to do so since she did that like about 15 years ago. So no news on her front. The other Iowa class battleships don't seem to have any concrete plans to do it just yet either. Dry docking one of these things requires many, many, many years worth of effort and a whole lot of money. So we appreciate all of you who've donated today and in the past, and who've got tickets and who've got the dry dock merch to support this project. Texas is the famous one who recently has been in dry dock. She just got out of the yard, like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And she's still sitting pier side in that yard doing finishing work. She's not set to reopen for another year or two. So she's been having a lot of work going on. But a lot of the other museum ships have been going through this as well. USS Kidd is slated to do it this year, hopefully, as well as USS Sullivan's. And many of the other ships have been in the past few years. Cod, Bowfin just got out of the yard.
LST 325 has been in the yard like within the last couple of weeks. I think she just got out recently.
So this is something that museum ships and active ships both do. It is rarer for museum ships because our budgets are tighter, but it is something that we have to do to make sure that we can keep these ships around as long as we'd like. Many years as we can. And yes, the dry dock merchandise is available on our website. Once again, that's battleshipnewjersey.org.
Who came up with that URL? That's not very creative.
So we are very close to Paulsboro now. That's what you're seeing in front of us. You're seeing the terminal. So we still have to make essentially a U-turn, so that way we can pull up to that pier. Once we hit the pier, we'll probably end our live stream, but expect lots and lots of content from us in the days, months, and years ahead. If you're unfamiliar, we usually put a video up on this channel 5 nights a week, Monday to Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be making a lot of content about the dry dock. But don't worry, we're not leaving you just yet. We're going to stay tuned until we tie up to the pier.
And so last week before we cut power, we filmed a bunch of videos for this upcoming week. And of course, we're expecting to get plenty of contact to film while we're doing the work. So we're planning to continue to do 5 videos a week throughout this entire process. We're not going to go dark on you unless something ungodly happens that forces us to. And if that happens, check out our other social media. We will post updates there.
Special thanks to Jay, who is tuning into our chat here. He just sent us some photos from the airport of the ship going past. That's been one of the great things about this project, seeing all of you guys watching from along the river, watching from around the world, sending in your photos. Send them all to us. If you saw us along the river today, you send it to education@battleshipnewjersey.org. I'd love to see every photo you took.
Yeah, Jay is a volunteer on the Battleship. I see Joe Billy signing in. Joe Billy's a tour guide here on the Battleship. Thanks for letting us know you were watching, Joe.
It has been a little while since we've talked about what we're doing in dry dock. We have a couple of big projects So mostly it's a shave and a haircut. We're going to repaint the hull and take a look at our through hull openings and make sure our cathodic protection's in good shape. So that's why we're doing this whole project. It's been about 30 years since she's been out of the water. So we're going to take a good look and make sure that we're going to get another 100 years out of her. We just, we're about to celebrate our 81st birthday. Is that how that math works out? She's still only 81 years young. We want to get a lot more years out of her. SS United States, we love that ship. She does, unfortunately, for right now, not make a great hospital. They took everything out of the inside of that ship, and she's just not sound enough to be used as a hospital in an emergency like that. So we have good hopes that she'll open as a museum at some point or in some other capacity. But they need Bill Gates kind of money to be able to do their next steps. We currently do not ship outside of the United States for our merchandise, but don't worry, we're coming soon. We are updating our website to be able to do that. So hopefully by the time that we get back in the water in 60 days, somewhere in that period, we'll have international shipping established. So look forward to that.
Yeah, our old shipping and retail system was more historic than the ship itself. So now we're getting up with the 21st century with that.
So as a reminder, today we have been moving entirely by tug power. The ship doesn't move under her own power, and our tugboats have been the real heroes of the day. They really got us where we needed to go in record time. If you haven't been with us for the last 2 hours and 45 minutes, that's roughly the amount of time that we've been underway. We started this live stream right around the time as we were leaving the pier. So 3 hours to this point is excellent time.
Cod is demanding a gallon of ice cream in tribute. And unfortunately, we don't have enough power to fire up the ice cream maker. Paul, you're going to have to wait on that one.
Why would they ask that?
Yeah, submarines have their own ice cream machines.
It is tradition in some cases that if you're, say, returning a sailor to a ship or whatever, you might barter them for some ice cream. Or ships that don't have ice cream might try and trade for some things. Fortunately, I think Cod's got everything under control. If you haven't checked out Cod's YouTube channel, they're very active on here, and they only give us a hard time sometimes. They're just jealous we have a battleship.
Got an invitation to come down and see Wisconsin. She's probably the Iowa-class battleship we filmed the least on. That's a complete oversight on our part. We love Keith and the guys down there, and we've got to go down and visit her again sometime soon. Probably not for the next 2 or 3 months. I foresee that being a little bit busy for me, keeping my calendar relatively open until later this summer.
Somebody asked when Olympia's headed to dry dock next, and Olympia, so she is normally docked very close to us. She's on the Philly side of the river to our Camden, but within eyesight of our home port. But she has a cofferdam system, which is keeping her out of dry dock, so they can maintain her water line in place, and she doesn't need to get taken over. She will probably eventually still end up in a dry dock to look at the full bottom of the ship, but they're able to maintain her water line in place. She, fortunately, is a lot smaller than us, so that is a lot more maintainable for them. It would be very difficult for us to do. And so, thus, we're going into a traditional dry dock instead of having a cofferdam system. But fortunately, Olympia is stable today. You might have heard in the past that she had some serious leaks. They've managed to get that under control, and Olympia is doing just fine. If you're looking for a ship to see while you're in the area to take a dry dock tour, Olympia is a great way to spend an afternoon.
I had a question about whether going under the bridge was a planned thing or a spur-of-the-moment decision. We had to transit under the bridge to get either to the dry dock or to Paulsboro. There was no way between it. We are sandwiched between the Ben Franklin Bridge, which is upstream of us. We had no reason to go up that way, and the Walt Whitman Bridge below us. There was nowhere else we could go except under one of those two. So it was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. We've been talking with their security for weeks and weeks, probably months at this point, to make sure that we could transit under it safely.
The folks from dry dock number 3 have been sending us updates throughout the day, including sending us photos from when we passed, but they also just sent us a photo of what our blocks look like. So they are ready and eager for us to come in. Don't worry, we will have lots of video content from when we get in the dry dock. You'll get to see those blocks yourselves. If you haven't subscribed yet, what have you been doing all day? Subscribe to our channel. We'll give you Battleship content all day, every day. But our blocks are set up and waiting for us. We're expected to pull into dry dock number 3 at the Navy Yard next Wednesday when we're done ballasting here at Paulsboro, which is what you're seeing right off our bow.
How likely is the crew to be conscripted should New Jersey be reactivated and returned to the fleet? I would say that is unlikely. I would absolutely be honored if I was retained on board if the ship was reactivated, but I think next year, and I turn 35, I'm no longer able to be drafted. So I'm not even sure that most of us meet the age and fitness requirements to be conscripted.
They're pumping the water in, so it's balanced.
We will get video footage of the ship actually sailing into the dry dock. We are going to aim to go live like we have today. The fact that we have not lost internet service all today has been absolutely remarkable. So hopefully we'll be able to continue that next week too. So the bridge height today was a concern because of our mast and radar antenna that were up on the top of the ship. We removed them, which is why it wasn't a huge concern today. The question here is, why wasn't it a concern 20 years ago when they brought the ship there? It absolutely was. They took it off then too and reattached it. So it's been sitting back on the ship for the last 20 years, and then we took it off to get back under the bridge. So same issue on both sides. Easy solution.
We might not be conscripted, but we will probably be asked to be an advisor. I would be honored to be involved in reactivating the ship in whatever form it takes. If that's being an advisor, I would absolutely be here for it.
We will be taking on ballast here at Paulsboro. We're going to take on about 2,000 tons, 500,000 gallons. Make sure we get that order right. So that'll be taking place over the next 4 days or so. We're going to show you video footage of that as we go. We're probably not going to live stream it. It's going to be a process, basically watching paint dry. So we'll probably give you a time lapse of what that looks like. We do have a propeller on the pier. So we have one as a display. We want to keep the propellers on the ship because that's where they belong. If they're experiencing significant corrosion and we need to remove them, we will. But we'd like to keep them in place if we can.
We just got a salute from the Blue Riband channel and RMS Queen Mary saluting us on our journey. There's a really great picture of us sailing to the Queen in, I think it's 1968, when we make Long Beach our home port. We didn't film anything when we were out there, did we? We've never been to...
I've never been to Queen Mary.
I've been to Queen Mary, but it was before we had the channel. So we've got to get out there the next time we're in the Long Beach area. If you guys live close by, make sure you go out and visit the Queen Mary.
Someone here has commented, this thing saw action, which is a nice reminder to all of you folks, if you're unfamiliar with the story of Battleship New Jersey. She is the most decorated She's got 18 battle stars. World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and then the 1980s, the ships in Lebanon and serving in Reagan's fleet. This ship has been around the world and then some.
Just found out I can be drafted up until 42 years old. I got to go find my draft card. I can't remember where I put that. So good news. Maybe I will be conscripted along with the Battleship if it happens in the next 7 years or so, 7 or 8 years.
We've had a few questions throughout the day about how the tug has gone and how it's felt on board. We haven't really felt much movement. She's been very steady. Our tugboats are moving real nice and easy. And we haven't really heard the ship groan. Down below in the tanks, we've been doing inspections throughout the day. We can hear the tugboats.
Oh, yeah, the propeller sound coming through the hull, you can really hear.
But we're just hearing the tugboats. We're not hearing our ship groan at all. Honestly, she seems to have barely noticed.
I can't tell that she's moving. She's not vibrating or anything. If I wasn't looking at the horizon and seeing that move, I wouldn't know the ship was moving at all right now.
Emmett here has brought up a great point. For many of us, to be the last time we see the ship move is this whole evolution over the course of the next 60 days. It is very rare that these things happen. The ship hasn't moved in the last 20 years. So for many of us, this will be our last chance. So we're glad that so many of you have joined us for this historic moment.
Since my 34th birthday was yesterday, I still have 34 more years until retirement age. So I might get one more chance to work on this ship when she goes into dry dock in 30 years.
So right now we are doing one of our more interesting maneuvers of the day. We are essentially making a U-turn. We're going to put ourselves right up against this pier that you can see right here on the starboard side. We are just scooting right up to that so that way we can park right here in Paulsboro or more. But you know what? I feel like parking is a perfectly fine word today.
Do you know how to find that total?
I'll look at it throughout the day, but I can't give you one now. We have been firing blanks throughout the day from the ship's saluting gun. We're not firing the 5-inch guns today. Our tugboats are very close to the side of the ship, and we want to keep them safe and happy. The saluting gun is much smaller and much safer for them. We are expecting to pull into dry dock number 3 in Philly on the 27th at high tide, which is roughly around 4 p.m. Expect to see it on the channel here then too. Of course, we will also be posting that content afterwards. We'll probably do a time lapse of her coming in. It's going to be a slow process.
Just got an announcement that the SS John W. Brown is looking to go into dry dock later this year. She's one of my hometown ships from Baltimore, and I've gotten to cruise on her because she is an active sailing vessel, or actively gets underway, not under sail. She has to go into dry dock more frequently than us and undergo more rigorous Coast Guard inspections. Love that ship. I've got to get on her again sometime soon. It's been too long. But I wish them a happy dry docking at some point in the near future.
For those of you who haven't heard it in a while, we will be doing tours underneath the ship at dry dock number 3. You get the chance to see the propellers, touch the bottom of the ship. It's a real once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If you want to join us, go to battleshipnewjersey.org. Sign up for your tour today. We've only got 8 days available to do tours. So get them while you can.
And there's still a couple of slots left for tours with me if you want a tour that's that I go around with you instead of any of our other tour guides.
Hey, man, my tours are fun, too.
You just go fight aliens.
For everyone chiming in about Texas today, we've been following along with Texas's project. It has been wonderful to see all the hard work they've been up to. They have a much larger scope of work. They were out of the water for over a year. Ours is pretty small compared to that. But we've been looking really closely about what they've been doing to make sure that we learn everything we can.
Got a question. What high school in Maryland did I attend? I went to Archbishop Curley in Baltimore County. Same high school my dad went to.
Yes, the question is why are we turning around? We're turning around so we can face the Philadphia Navy Yard. Our next trip is going to be on Wednesday. So that's next week. And we are headed from Paulsboro, where we're mooring today, over to the Navy Yard for the actual dry docking. So we could turn around today or we could turn around next week. And we elected to turn around today, which will make our next trip that much easier. So as a reminder, we're stopping here in Paulsboro to ballast. We're going to take on some extra water so that way our bow doesn't stick up so high compared to our stern. So when we go into the dry dock, we'll sit on those blocks nice and even. All told, it's about 500,000 gallons.
I have a question on here. If I ever served in the Navy, I did not. I started working on museum ships when I was 16 and have just been there ever since. I've been working on them for 18 years now, more than half of my life. If the Navy still had battleships, maybe I would have joined. But the only place to find battleships was on museum ships, so that's where I went.
Thinking of your past, this isn't your first dry docking. How many ships have you dry docked?
Oh, man. I've dry docked a few. We got to go on USS Texas and USS Slater in dry dock. I would hardly say that we worked on those. My first one would have been USS Constellation. When you see a ship out of the water, you really think about how great their designers were. John Lenfeld did a great job with Constellation. Got to dry dock the Coast Guard cutter Taney. I worked on her for a number of years before coming up here to the battleship. I'm sure there's other ones, but my mind's a little bit mush right now.
There's been a great question about how we're going to go into the dry dock itself. We are going stern first. Which will make an excellent shot when we get that water drained out.
Got a question here. Why are we refilling why are we ballasting the ship in Paulsboro instead of at the dry dock itself? The pier at the dry dock that could accommodate us, Pier 6, has another ship in it. So Paulsboro was the nearest berth that was both deep enough for us to settle into as we take on more water and capable of taking a ship our length that we could get to.
We considered ballasting at our museum berth, but with the amount of water that was underneath us compared to where the mud started, we didn't want to get stuck in the mud. So out of abundance of caution, we decided not to ballast there and are ballasting here in Paulsboro instead. Ingham is not due for dry dock anytime soon, as far as I know. She was dry dock, 2 years ago now? So she was in dry dock not so long ago. Ingham is a Coast Guard cutter down in Key West. She could certainly use your support down there. But she was in dry dock not so long ago. But being a Coast Guard cutter, she's got a fairly thin hull. So she definitely needs it fairly often.
Somebody asked, how physically large is the 500,000 gallons of water we're going to take on? I have a hard time describing that. It's about the same as 10,000 55-gallon oil drums or 500,000 milk cartons or milk containers, gallon milk containers. That's kind of a cop-out answer. I can't really give you a better number.
Deep into the ballasting process, it's really simple. We're going to put a pump in the river. We're going to pump water into the ship. We're primarily pumping it into tanks specifically for ballast water. They're all the way at the front of the ship. They're just big, empty spaces. You'll see them in some of our videos. We've done some videos on ballasting in the past. On the blocks, we're going to pump that water back out to make sure that our hull doesn't sweat so we can get adhesion of the paint on the hull. Those coatings really need a dry surface to put them on.
We've got somebody on here who says that they served under the legendary Captain Larry Sequest. So maybe they're an Iowa sailor. Captain Sequest was one of the commanding officers of the Big Stick in the 1980s. And he's Oregon.
Has USS New Jersey ever run aground in her career? Funnily enough, the closest thing we've got to running aground was not so far right here. First launched at the Philadphia Navy Yard, again, drydocking. She went down the slipways really fast. So fast that the tugboats couldn't quite stop her before she ran into the state of New Jersey. Which is actually how we ended up in our second trip into dry dock number 3, was to clean out the mud that we picked up in that slide. That's the closest thing we ever got to grounding. We haven't ground while we've been underway, as far as I can tell. We did get stuck in the Panama Canal for about an hour once, but it floated us back up again. So not quite a true grounding. We've been pretty lucky. Our sisters, not so much.
We have a question on here. Salem and Massachusetts are just about due for dry docking. They both went to dry dock most recently around 1990, so they're a little bit over the 30-year mark, just like us. And where would they go? The last time they went to dry docking was in Boston. I can't remember the exact dry dock number, but it is a dry dock that is run by North Atlantic Ship Repair, which is the same company that runs Dry Dock 3 here at the Philadphia Navy Yard. In fact, Phil, one of the leaders of the project at the shipyard side, was involved in dry docking Massachusetts back in 1990. So almost certainly they would go to that exact same dry dock. I can't remember the number there, but they would most likely be towed to Boston and go into the same dry dock in North Atlantic. They'd be talking to the same exact folks we are.
We've had a few questions about the flags flying off the front of the ship here. The colorful flags that you're seeing, those are our friendship flags. They're decorative. They're just very pretty. Each flag has a specific meaning, but today they're flying in a nonsense order not to spell anything. That's dictated by the Navy, so sailors don't get any ideas of spelling anything out. We have other flags flying, including our very large holiday ensign. That's the big American flag. 2 of our battle flags are out there as well. And we've got some signal flags spelling out some messages on the side, like our call sign.
We have a question here. How did we check the ballast tanks to make sure they're not leaking before we started filling them? The short answer is we didn't. They all border shell plating, and none of them have water coming in, so they're not going to have water going out. Now the question is, are they going to leak into the ship? We do not know for certain yet. Almost all of them border the other tanks that we're going to fill, and we're not expecting to find any leaks because we haven't really found any significant leaks elsewhere. But one way you could do it is if you sealed the tank and then pumped compressed air into it and see if it holds air pressure. Again, we're not at all concerned with their capabilities of holding water, so we haven't even tested that.
People have asked today if the ship's gauges and things have been working, and generally, no, we're relying on the information from our tugs on the details of the ship's movements. However, one of the things that I just noticed is I put a GoPro on Polaris.
Mm-hmm.
On the Polaris, it's sitting right here next to the camera. Yep. And I kept being irritated because I kept having to turn this thing. It's doing a time lapse. And the reason that I turned it is it's moving.
Vibrations, look at that moving right now.
Is it has ever so slightly moved as we've moved about today. It keeps flipping around, which has been really cool to see. So, but we're relying on our tugboats for all the data today.
One of the ship systems that does still work, thanks to our volunteers restoring it, is the ship's anemometer. So the thing that tells wind speed and direction. So that is still feeding out on various gauges around the bridges and the combat spaces around the ship.
We are going to try and stream New Jersey on her voyage home, just like we did on our way to dry dock today. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, we make videos about absolutely everything. So we're going to do our best to continue to live stream throughout the project where we can, and otherwise do pre-recorded videos, but expect a live stream for the way back as well.
Absolutely everything relating to gray boats.
Someone asked if the ship's bell still works. Absolutely does. You can't quite see it from this angle, but if you see the large antenna on the bow, if you see that red stripe on antenna that looks like a Christmas tree, it's hanging just on the other side of that antenna.
Basically where the signal flags terminate.
Yeah. We have we have one other bell and a ship's gong on board. Neither of them are viewable from this angle either. We do still ring the bell every once in a while.
All right, so if the Battleship was reactivated today, which ship would keep the name? For those of you who don't know, there's a submarine New Jersey currently under construction. She will be commissioned, I believe, September 14th of this year. I've talked about this in some other videos before. In the past, the Navy has had multiple ships with the same name, or they've been planning on it. During World War I, we were building a pair of battle cruisers named Constellation and Constitution. They were the same class as what became the Lexington-class aircraft carriers. And during that time, the new ships got the names, and the older ships were renamed Old Constellation and Old Constitution. Another thing that's happened, we had some armored cruisers. USS Maryland was one of them. And then we built the Battleship Maryland, BB-46. They renamed her to a city in Maryland that did not have another ship named after it, USS Frederick. So my guess would be either we, the Battleship, would be renamed as Old New Jersey, or the submarine would be renamed to something like USS Trenton or USS Princeton.
New Jersey.
Yeah, it would be a city in New Jersey.
USS New in New Jersey.
Yeah,
Newest Jersey.
yeah, we've been referring to her as New Jersey. Actually, Newark would be another good one. That was an old cruiser that hasn't had her name reused in a while, to my knowledge.
So we are almost to our pier, it looks like, yes?
Yeah, it looks like we're maybe 100 feet away from the pier. We're more or less parallel to where we're going to be moored, and the tugs are just pushing us in sideways. Again, that way they know that we have a deep enough berth from the channel coming straight over to the pier. I believe it's about 45 feet deep here. We draw 32 feet at the stern right now, and we're probably going to draw around 30 feet at the bow when we're done. So that's one of the reasons why we're coming to Paulsboro. It is deeper than the pier where we normally are, and there's nobody here. So they've got room for us. I had a question here a minute ago that I didn't get a chance to answer because of some of the other questions. If I could raise any ship from the seafloor and open her as a museum in pristine condition, which would it be? That is a completely unfair question. There are so many that I would love to see raised. The Battleship Yamato is up there for me. I would love to see her raised and turned into a museum. Many of the ships that come to mind are American, but there are a good number of American museum ships and far less in foreign countries. So I would love to see some of those foreign ships reactivated. Or not reactivated, but time traveled into museum ships.
Lots of votes for Saratoga in this, it seems.
Oh, yeah, a lot of Saratoga votes. If we could make her unradioactive, Sister Sarah would make a great museum ship. Got some Hornets. Bodie McBoatface hasn't sunk yet, to my knowledge. Edmund Fitzgerald. Anybody else have the Johnny Horton song come to mind with that? Oh, and there's a HMS Hood, so there's Johnny Horton again.
There's been a couple important Samuel B. Roberts ships, but even the most recent one, who just went to the scrapyard like 6 months ago, I would have saved her. I do love her. We were lucky enough to get on board.
Prince Eugen. Prince Eugen is kind of upsetting that we ever sunk her. She would have made a decent museum ship. I don't like things that glorify the Nazis, but things that we captured from the Nazis, cut all their iconography off of, and then nuked would make great museums. This will happen to the next fascists we find too.
Nagato would have been good.
Yeah, and Nagato's another one. Nagato.
They were trying to sink that after the war, though. They weren't letting that stay around, unfortunately.
Yeah, the fact that Japan survived the war with a battleship left, we couldn't nuke her fast enough. But Nagato would have made a great museum ship.
So we're getting really close to our pier here, guys. We are almost ready to start tying up. Our tugboats have been hard at work all day.
We're probably going to have to sign off when that happens because we're going to have to help with the line handling. Any last minute questions before we have to duck out of here? Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark would have made an interesting museum ship. Can you imagine the smell of all those animals?
Before we lose everybody, one last plug. If you want to see the ship out of the water in dry dock, you can go to battleshipnewjersey.org and you can take your tour. We're doing them Saturdays and Sundays in April and May. You can get underneath the ship, see the propellers, see the screws. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So do it while you can. And all the tickets for that support the dry docking process.
Yeah, we're at Paulsboro now.
There's an interesting comment that we need to bring USS Pueblo back from North Korea. She is currently the only American ship that is being held by a foreign country. She is still technically a commissioned vessel, and she is technically a museum ship as she is open for tours in North Korea. And honestly, not a big fan of North Korea, their political views, their isolationism, any of that. But from pictures I've seen, they maintain her pretty well. I have to respect people who maintain museum ships.
Someone did ask if our online store will still be open while we're in dry dock. Absolutely. The online store is always open. Get your merchandise while you can. One of the cool things we're doing is if you want to fly a flag on the ship, we will do that for you. So we're doing that while we're in dry dock. We did some today while we're underway. If you want a flag flown the next time we get underway, either now or in about 60 days, you can do that as well.
I have an interesting question here about becoming a museum ship curator. Did I require a college degree? To get this, what college did I go to? I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, which is very near my home in Baltimore. I got an undergrad degree in history. Many of my peers have higher degrees, master's degrees, PhDs in things like public history or museum sciences, museum studies, or a number of other things. I would not say that it is a requirement. I think the thing that has helped me the most become a museum ship curator is just how long I've worked on museum ships. You can't be around for 18 years without learning a few things. So I would say experience trumps education. Certainly having a degree in history or some related field helps, but having experience in the field helps just as much.
We got a good question when the ballasting starts. We're not starting ballasting until tomorrow. It is not something that we're starting today.
I'm tired and I want to go home.
Today, we still have a few important tasks ahead of us. Once we actually meet up to the pier, our line handlers, they're going to do the back half of their job today. They're going to get us all tied up to the pier. We're going to bring down all the flags today, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a big task for us later today. We have to do one more round of tank inspections just to make sure that everything stayed nice and secure since our last inspection. With the ship underway, we're just being extra cautious to make sure that we didn't get any water intrusion. So we still have a lot left to do today. Ballasting will wait until tomorrow. Don't worry, you can see ballasting on this YouTube channel as well. We will make lots of video content about it. Making a time lapse of a
No, if I have to watch it in real time, so do they.
I'm trying to, what is the word that I'm looking for?
We're also going to make them watch the paint dry when we do that.
Also that.
What's the trim even out?
Yeah, so
And
watching
you know
the
what?
trim
These
even
sick
out.
freaks are going to tune in and do it.
Full disclosure, we love all of you lovely people who have tuned in with us today. How long will it take to drain the dry dock? They're going to take about a day from the time that we get in to the time that she's actually high and dry. So thus, we are going to time lapse that as well. It's also like watching paint dry.
I have a question on here. How is Trooper? Trooper is my beagle. He is going to turn 13 in May. Every morning when I leave for work, he jumps up in the bay window and he bays at me until the car pulls out of sight. And that's the last time I saw him today. He looked a little bit dejected at that time, but he always looks happy when I come home at the end of the day. Funny question on here. Did I get my college degree in order to become a museum ship curator? No, I did not. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I didn't declare as a history major until I was 2 years into school. I got some what I thought was good advice from a close friend who said that history was a hobby and not a career. So I looked at a bunch of other different subjects my first 2 years, and it turns out I'm not good at a darn thing except history. So reluctantly, I got a history degree, and then I graduated college. And remember, at this point, I have worked on museum ships for 6 years. I graduated college. I'm like, well, now what am I going to do? I was graduated for a full year. I'd been working on museum ships for 7 years before I looked around me and saw that many of my coworkers made a career out of this, and I could too. So that is when I decided to become a museum ship curator.
It's a nice reminder to you folks out there who are really interested in a career in museum ships. There is a path for you. And folks who work museum ships come from all walks of life. So make sure you, if you're interested, give it a try. We've had a lot of comments about our beloved trooper, the Beagle, Ryan's dog. But we had dog mascots when the ship was in service. My particular favorite being a wiener dog named Heine, who was on board with Captain McCorkle in 52. So during the Korean War. But we had dogs during World War II, Susie Bell and Lucy Bell, sometimes called Spike. Lulu Bell. And a cat named Majuro at one point. So we've had our fair share of mascots. Trooper doesn't come on board. He would cause way too much trouble. I want my snacks. He can't have my snacks.
He is louder than the ship's horn.
There's that too. As you can see, we are getting really close to the pier now, folks.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to sign off here and get back to line handling. You guys have been great today. It's been great talking with you all. We'll do another stream like this the next time we move the ship. Remember, get your tours to dry dock. Go online, battleshipnewjersey.org, and book them now. We've sold several today. We're filling up real fast. There's only 16 days that we are going to be open, maybe 15 days. Only 15 days that we're going to be open to do this. So we are going to run out of slots. Get them now while you can.
Thanks again for joining us, folks. We are officially ending our stream. See you on the rest of the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State and lovely folks like you.